All right. It's my pleasure to call to order the Wednesday, December 3rd meeting of the Freeport Planning Board. The full board tonight. Everybody got shoveled out. All right. I'm kind of excited, honestly, about the early season snow. I like a good snowstorm. We'll dive into item number one, which, as usual, is an information exchange and an update on items reviewed by the Freeport Project Review Board. There's a really important one in here, Kyle.
Yeah, it's the first thing on the list. So at the November Project Review Board meeting, some good news. We had approved the 51-unit multifamily apartment building project on the corner of Depot and Mill. So that was great. It ended up having 2 meetings at the Project Review Board. It utilized that exemption that the board approved not that long ago, where multifamily buildings in a single building, go through just site plan, don't have to go through subdivision, which cuts down an extra meeting. So that was great. That's approved, and now we'll start working with the applicant on their the conditions of approval and getting them their building permits, and hopefully we'll see that underway.
Do you know what the rough timeline is on that? Is it?
Yeah, he said he hopes to be done in April of 2027.
Done, like,
Wow.
done with the project?
Done, like,
Yeah.
leasing up.
Like
Start, I mean,
Yeah.
that's assuming he starts in March, and then it's a 13-month,
Yep.
something like that.
Yeah, I know they're looking to start in spring. Also at that meeting, we had a conceptual subdivision plan for 6 duplexes for a total of 12 units on Elm Street. So that was just a conceptual plan, so no decisions there. They're going to do a site walk for that project in December, and then we'll wait for the applicant to come back on that one. So more housing in and around downtown, which is good to see. And then there was also, in terms of larger projects that the board's been looking at, they continue looking at the large solar farm application for a project on Prout Road. That did get tabled because the applicant needs to follow up with some additional stormwater info. So they'll come back, looks like in December, hopefully for their final meeting, but we'll have to wait and see what they come back with. A couple other small projects, design review, little things, but in terms of big projects, that was that. We did get an application. It hasn't gone to the board yet, but just so the board is aware, a conceptual site plan application will be going before the PRB in December for another multifamily building on Depot Street, in the vacant parking lot that's been barricaded, next to the 2-story.
This is the one that got the drainage.
Yeah, the
easement
council had
removed.
approved some.
I don't know, was anybody at that meeting or where? No.
I knew that happened.
Yep, so they'll be going to the PRB for their conceptual review on the December 17th meeting. So it's good to see as well.
Do you know if it's 3 stories or 4 stories?
It's 4 stories with a loft on the 4th floor, so parts of it come across as 5 stories, like height-wise, but parts of it, come across as 4 stories.
Interesting.
45-ish units. Yeah.
On a smaller piece of property.
Yeah. So, we could know more at the PRB meeting, but, the application's in public, so it's kind of open for anyone who wants to be interested in it at this point.
Are there any affordability features on any of these projects?
So this project that's coming for conceptual, I think they're proposing like 75% of the units as affordable. I think the idea is that the loft units on the top floor are market rate and kind of supplement the affordable units on the other floors.
And this is, I believe, the one, if I'm not saying anything I shouldn't, but it is all public, right? It's the one that there's like basically a carbon copy of the building that they're proposing, that the developer's already built. Is that the one?
Yeah, they have buildings in other communities, and I think part of their whole this developer's strategy is efficiency and being able to get these up, to serve their purpose and not have to go through a unique process each time. So the more they can replicate on, sites and carry over from site to site and project to project kind of speeds up the construction process of getting it all through and approved and built. So, yeah, we'll see where that one goes. So that's it for items reviewed by the board. Number 2 on council news. So last night, the council did vote to extend the paid parking moratorium. But then at the same meeting on another, what?
To extend it until?
Well, you have to extend it for the 6 months, but you can end it early if it's resolved ahead of that. So at the same meeting last night, they also voted to send guidance to the planning board that the direction they want to go in is to not allow paid parking downtown. So council basically directed the town manager to put a memo together, which will come back with some draft language and that memo to the board at maybe the February meeting. We'll have to wait and see on timing for that.
Why do we have to be involved if the council?
Off-street parking and loading standards are
It's
part of our,
Oh, because it has to go into the ordinances. I
that's
understand.
what section is it, 520?
Yeah, and council didn't give specific language for the ordinance. We still have to create the draft red line of the ordinance change and,
I mean, theoretically, we could disagree with them and then send our recommendation, and then they could choose to take it or not, right?
Which we
So
did.
There's still,
I'll wait to have that discussion.
Wait to have
Get too sidetracked there. Do you know if they left open the possibility of, I'm assuming that their recommendation applies specifically to privately owned off-street parking. Like, this is not the town street or like the.
Right, so this is in the off-street parking section of the zoning ordinance, so it's not going to apply to,
They could do whatever they
Right of
want
way.
on street parking.
Right, yeah, which I bring it up because of the spec MC and.
The recommendations.
yeah.
Whatever
Jeff Speck
recommendations
does
are going to come out of that Route 1 corridor revitalization project, at least in the early discussions, we heard about the possibility of paid parking in certain locations downtown, premium parking spots that people might be willing to pay for as being actually a good thing that kind of serves multiple ends, so anyway.
Yeah, this would be unrelated to
Yep.
that.
Cool.
So just to say that something will be coming to the board probably at the February meeting relating to that. So we can talk about that more then.
Was that voted?
Yep.
Was it a unanimous vote?
Yes, I believe so. And then I did want to add one thing to Info Exchange that wasn't on here. It's more of a scheduling item. So in January, normally our meeting would be on the 7th. So we are looking to do in January a joint workshop with the council and planning board, and I don't know if any other committees are involved, but at least the two of you, related to that Village Corridor initiative, to present the build-out analysis that the consultant has been working on. So seeing as staff needs to spend some time working on some of the other things that we're looking at anyway, our C1, C3 stuff, design review, potentially the parking item, my suggestion would be that we cancel our normally scheduled July 7th planning board meeting in favor of the board coming to that July 14th joint workshop, or January 14th workshop with the council to get the presentation on the VCI build-out analysis. Any thoughts on that?
It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about that corridor
Yeah.
stuff, so I think it's,
We also felt like it, it sort of ties into the commercial 1, commercial 3 conversations we've been having as well. all of the C3 falls within that study area and the first part of the C1. So I think it'll be useful to see that presentation before we get into looking at the draft language of potential, like red line track changes to the zoning ordinance related to the C1, C3. So, but I can follow up later on with specific info on the meeting.
Is it safe to
Just to
assume,
confirm.
just as a placeholder, that it's going to be at 6 PM?
I believe so. 6 p.m.? Yeah, 6 p.m. on the 14th.
14th,
So
right?
we'd cancel the 7th, and then the 14th at 6 p.m.
Yep.
And that's it for me.
One of those small projects that got design review was mine. I was very proud of myself for getting through the project review board on a small design review certificate, so
Very good.
And site plan
a little
amendment.
pat on the back for that. And what?
And site plan.
Yeah, it was a site plan amendment. It was fun. All right. Item number 2. So item number 2 is a review of the minutes of October 1st, but am I correct that we also never approved the meeting minutes from September, whatever that day was, 3rd or something?
That's my understanding.
Possibly. I might have missed one.
I think,
Did we not have
Yeah,
a
because it
quorum?
was
I think we
no
didn't have a quorum,
quorum.
and it's
Yeah.
in the, this is why we keep meeting.
It's in the minutes.
It's in the minutes,
That's
right?
where I
So it's
saw
like,
it.
Minutes.
I never would have remembered that had it not been in the minutes. So thank you, Sharon, as usual, for capturing so much detail in these minutes. So, even though it's not on the agenda, I think, it seems pretty minor, right? Can we still act on the approving the?
I think if someone could make a motion to amend the item to include the September 17th minutes, and then
Okay.
vote on amending the item, and then we could vote to approve.
Okay, so
Both
we have
sets of minutes.
a motion to amend.
Well, I just wanted to say one thing, and that is the minutes from October indicated that I was present, and I was not.
Okay.
Okay. We'll go in.
First, we gotta-
sort of in order, yeah. So let's deal with September 1st. So we need a motion to,
I move we amend the motion to include the September minutes with the text amendments to be reviewed as well as the October to be approved.
okay.
Many of the agendas.
End of the,
The
yep.
agenda.
Okay. Mitch, does that mean you second the motion?
I will second it, even though
All
I
in
have to
favor?
recuse myself from the subsequent vote.
Yeah, you can still second the motion, though. All in favor? You can vote for the motion. This is just to amend our agenda.
Agenda.
Amended.
Okay, so our agenda is now officially amended. So now, I think we did talk I don't know if we talked briefly about it, but do we have, so who?
Does anyone have their
Does
copies?
anybody have
I have my
I
copy right
wasn't
here.
there,
I can
so-
pull it up in 2 seconds. This would have been, yeah, so 9/3. I got the date right at least.
September meeting.
So this is the September
I
meeting.
was at the September meeting, but I haven't reviewed the minutes.
So Andrew, Wayne, Bonnie, David, and I were present. Rosemary and Mitch
I
were
was
not here.
Correct.
But since we have a full house tonight, that gives us a quorum. I went through these, not in detail, but as usual, they are pretty complete. So my recommendation would be to get it over with and put them into the record.
Do you want to take 2 separate votes, one on
Yes,
September?
yeah, so this is just for the September 3rd. Any word minutes? Do I hear a motion to approve them as written?
These are September minutes?
Yep. So we have a motion from Wayne. Do I have a second from Andrew? And Rosemary and Mitch have to abstain
Not
from this
vote,
vote,
right.
but everybody else in favor of approving the minutes. All right, so that's unanimous, 5, 2 recused, and those September 3rd minutes are now approved. All right, now we move on to our regularly scheduled programming, reviewing the October 1st minutes. Did anybody have comments on these?
I have a few. I mean, there do seem to be a couple things that are wrong. They're little. I marked up when, these appropriately should be called transcriptions more than minutes.
Yeah, they're close, yeah.
And so when it quoted me as saying I blew off a meeting, I wished it had said missed the meeting. But that aside, on page 3,
Did you actually say blew
I
off?
guess I said I blew off the meeting. And
Now
there it
it's
is.
gonna, there it is.
Let that be a
It's
lesson
black
to
and
you.
white.
What
Oh,
page
my
is that?
But that's on page 2. But on page 3, it's quoting Matt Peters, and he may have misspoke, but he speaks of design review, and I believe at the third time when he says the design review board, that should be the project review board.
Yes.
And on the last sentence in my quote, it says, I point out that in the future it would go away anyway. I think it should be changed anyway. That ordinance is not going away, but it is being changed.
What page is that one?
That's
That's
again on
3.
page 3. It's in the penultimate, second to last paragraph. All of that. And then on page 6, fourth paragraph, I think it says, this is what the next footprint will do, and I believe it should be max building footprint.
What paragraph are you in?
That was in page 6. See, it says that is what the next footprint will do, and I think that word next is supposed to be, I mean, I wasn't sure if it was net or max building, but in context, it looks like it's max building.
Okay, I'll take a look at it.
It's one or the other, it's not next.
Yep.
There's a typo on page 8, but I don't care.
Got to be max footprint, right? Because
I think it's.
Yeah, we never use net footprint. It's either
Right.
max
It's
footprint or
max building
gross floor
footprint.
area.
Yeah.
That's what the conversation was about. And then on page 14, right in the big paragraph in the middle, right in the middle of that, it says Chair Kapala added that maybe the speed limits do not match up, and I don't think that word speed is right.
This is the big third paragraph?
Yeah, right in the middle of the big paragraph, it says, right under where it says allowing 5,000 square foot minimum lot sizes. And then it says, you say the speed limits don't match up. And I don't think that's right.
I can take a look at it and see what probably made sense.
I drifted to not placing this, which is probably why it didn't jump out to me in the, yeah. Oh, okay, I do sort of remember this. I think it's, speed limits is correct. However, it sort of lacks context, because I think what I was saying is like, we don't want, short, like if it gets built out as a residential neighborhood, basically, the speed limit would not stay where it is now. Is kind of what like right now, the speed limit is like 45 or 50 right down there, and I think we were talking about that. If it gets built
So
out.
it really
in a
is
neighborhood-
correct.
So I think it's correct, it just lacks a little bit of context, but, it's probably not the end of the world.
The two other things I just got from reading it, one is, I think it would help the whole board if we used to have a cheat sheet of things to follow from the comp plan to make our motions accord. And I wonder if we could have such a similar cheat sheet.
For what motions? Because I'll do that for when we vote on like zoning
Every time we make a
changes.
motion, every time we make a change in the zoning, we have to say it accords with this, this, and this from the comp plan. And we used to have this list of like 8 things that were sort of the 8 major principles. Maybe it's all sitting right there and we just.
So I add, every time we do an actual zoning change and there's a motion, I always
You always
add
do it
like
for
3,
us.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying
But it
before
was
you
fun to
had
have a
like
little list that sort of reminded us of, these are the
Okay.
main things we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, I mean, we could work on
It'd
putting
be
something
worth
together.
us thinking about that. And the other one was, and maybe we're going to talk about 527 tonight, but as we go to C1 and C3, I think this issue of the front line setback is going to be a real thing for us to think about. I don't even know I don't have a horse in the race, I don't have an answer to it. I just think it's one of the most important decisions we can make, and especially if you imagine residential mixed with commercial.
Sure.
I'm done.
All right, so we have those changes. Anybody else have proposed changes? Do we hear a motion to approve the minutes as amended at today's meeting?
So
Motion?
moved.
All right. And a second from Rosemary?
Yep.
Just because. All in favor? Was everybody was there, so yeah, all in favor?
Except David.
Oh, sorry, I don't know how I missed that, it's right there. Okay, so.
Oh, and that's
And
another
Bonnie.
amendment that has to be
Oh, and
made. in
Dave,
the-
yeah, we
Right.
did.
I got that one.
Yep, all right, so the
Okay.
5 of us who were there can now vote. All right, another 5 unanimous
All right,
vote.
now we move along.
Great. That was more exciting than usual. Item number 3 is a discussion on the design review ordinance update. So it's been a few months, but we are looking at a text-only version that I know Kyle and Caroline and maybe others, Jess, have been working hard to get our recommendations and kind of the direction that we talked about last time we talked about this incorporated into this latest draft. And so tonight will just be about discussing that updated draft and recommending changes prior to the development of the full draft, which will have graphics and the map. We don't have any members of the public in the room here tonight or the project review board, but I have been in touch with the project review board chair recently just to kind of talk this through. So they're very aware that this is happening.
Have they
and
read it in detail?
I don't think they've read the latest draft in detail yet. No, I mean, maybe individual members.
They
have.
provided
certainly-
comments when we provided comments to the previous draft?
I think the last one, when you looked at it over the late summer, I think they did get that because I remember specifically one of the board members having comments, like somewhere in the memo I flagged,
Okay.
that we added a bunch of language about the review process. That was something that one of the board members flagged. So I know that they've been aware of the status, and at least some of them have looked at the document.
Shouldn't they have an official weigh-in?
Well, so the idea is that once we kind of get through this text
take it to
part and we have the whole draft with the graphics and everything, we would invite the PRB and the public and everything to weigh in then on a complete draft. But wanted to get to that point of having a complete draft, past the point of we're going to make some massive change that's going to alter the whole thing. That's kind of what I wanted to get through first. Make sure we're beyond that point, then kind of loop everyone in.
Yep. So, yeah, so, I mean, I know the PRB has kind of been following along, but they feel like,
I do flag at their meetings as
Yeah.
well. Like at the last meeting, I flagged that, the planning board would be discussing this
Well, it's the
evening.
most cantankerous person on this thing in the past. I just wanted to start by saying I think it's 100% better.
Oh, great.
it's a good place to
Like,
start.
way better.
So we're not going to be here until 10 PM
I
tonight?
don't think, I mean, and we can, there's some things to pick apart, I think, but I think it's,
Yeah, I had a ton of
Clearer.
comments, but a lot of them are pretty minor. So I felt similarly like we've come a long way. And
so thank you.
Yeah.
and I think the graphics is still a bit of a question mark for me because, best case scenario, it could really add a lot and make a lot of standards much clearer and really serve the document. I think it would be hard to imagine that it won't be positive to see the graphics, but there is still a little bit of wiggle room for
Yep.
how closely do the graphics hew to what we have in mind and how easy are they to interpret? So that's still a bit of an unknown, but yeah. Do you have anything to add, Kyle? Do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, so I didn't want to go back through, unless people have specific comments, but I didn't want to start at a place of going through line by line and going through everything. I kind of bulleted out some, the changes that we made based on board comments, staff comments, not every single little clarification or thing, but just highlighting the big picture areas that we changed. There were, well, like 3-4 areas that I specifically wanted to touch on to get more guidance on. So if we could start there, and then, we can go into, individual comments that the board has. I have the draft up, so I can either make changes or comments in it, and then we can go from there. But so one of the, I'll start with the staff review component. So I reworked basically the whole Section 4 applicability section because I just didn't think it read that well before. And this is kind of how we split out our applicability in our site plan ordinance, as well as the current design review ordinance, where you have what goes to the project review board, if there's a staff review board, a staff review component, those are all split out as kind of subsections. So in the previous iteration that you looked at, we didn't have any staff review component. But in thinking about it, the whole idea behind this ordinance is to have more clear, specific standards. So if that's the case, then specifically for non-contributing buildings, which are regulated by the Section 6 standards, right? We've broken out some pretty clear, objective standards, especially compared to what we have in the current design review ordinance. So the idea here was to create, 4.3, which is, town planner review for smaller scale applications. So if you were doing, an alteration to a non-contributing building, if you were doing an addition to a non-contributing building that's under 500 square feet, or if you were doing a new accessory building that's between 200 and 500 square feet, these would be things that would only have to meet the standards of Section 6, which are pretty clear. So I feel that there's a likelihood that I would be able to review and approve those applications fairly easily. And if there was a contentious issue, just like we have currently in design review and site plan at staff review, I could always kick it up to the board, or an applicant could kick it up to the board if they wanted to.
Or even theoretically, some like lesser future version of you could hopefully decipher it too.
Yeah.
Important, right? That it's not just, it's like any town planner in the future.
Oh, yeah,
hopefully
right.
could navigate these.
Oh, yeah, I'm not trying to wield the power for myself. It's a way to get these smaller applications that the PRB generally, at least in my time here, doesn't seem to usually have any issues with or many comments on, out of having to clog up board meeting agendas and kind of delay projects for applicants and have people be able to go through more efficiently. Yeah, comment?
Well, I think it makes all the sense in the world,
Yep.
except for one thing.
Yep.
Is there a scenario where somebody's building a small addition, but it's right in the front, and it's really at odds with the intent of the ordinance? So how would that, so maybe if it said something like, if it's substantially consistent with what's there,
Well, that's what the standards are getting at, that if they meet the standards of Section 6. So this is only for non-contributing buildings,
Right.
not for contributing. So these are,
but they still, if you built a new non-contributing building, all the standards, and you get to that in your summary, this issue about shouldn't non-contributing additions be subject to the same thing, same standards as non-contributing new construction, and I would think yes.
no, I agree.
So I think what I'm hearing, the difference in the two is the standards still apply. It's just that if it's a small.
He's reviewing whether it meets the standards. I got it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's
All-
like,
all the
it's
standards
like,
are still
all right,
apply.
how much
understand.
damage can we do in 250 square feet or whatever
I
Well,
also,
if he thinks they're doing damage,
Right,
he
then he
still
can
has
kick
to
it up.
certify that it meets the standards.
the other thing I'd point out is with these smaller scale additions or alterations, a lot of times they're on like the single family homes on the smaller side streets. those Section 7 standards don't apply to those. Section 7 only applies to the commercial and the multifamily. So, recently we've had a few, like garage additions and people talking about wanting to do sheds and things like that for single-family homes. And, we have the standards in Section 6 that the accessory structure has to be, set back from the, but yeah, if there was a very prominent, very visible project that I looked at and said, yeah, that's probably going to be pretty controversial, then it would give the planner the authority to kick it up to the board.
Okay, so you do have that. I was going to
Yes,
say,
yes.
maybe add something in that, your judgment, you can kick it up to the,
Yeah,
I think it actually might.
it's at the end of that section, so 4.7, notwithstanding the allowance for town planner review, the town planner or the applicant determines that a project appears to be complicated or disputed. And that language, I think, was pulled right from our site plan ordinance. It mirrors the process there.
Does the town know in advance which buildings are contributing and non-contributing, or is that determined at the time of application?
Well,
There's going to be a
we'll have it
list.
mapped out. It'll be in the ordinance.
It's going to be attached to this
Every buil-
ordinance.
Yeah,
building?
so right now, we have if you look at our design review now, the last page is a map of the whole district, and it has an A, B, or C on each property. So right now, we're using the Class A, Class B, Class C for the buildings. But through this process, we're switching where A and B is going to be contributing, and Cs are going to be non-contributing. But we'll have a similar map and resource in the new ordinance.
And do we think that building owners are aware of their designation?
Well,
Are they
there's,
today?
Yeah.
Probably not.
through the public notification process, that's part of what one of our next steps is going to be. We're going to notify everyone in the district because there is
Every single person in the district will be notified, and it will tell them whether they're contributing or non-contributing.
I don't know if we'll individually write up, but we would link to the document that says,
Yeah.
that has the map and the
Your property
spreadsheet.
may have been, will have been classified as this or that. To find out, go here.
So this is before my time, but I think there was a re-inventory in 2019. So I think there's a couple properties that probably changed designations that went, I think more so there were contributing properties that went to non-contributing.
Yep.
So there will be a few new ones that, people may learn that their property right now is designated as a Class A or Class B, and they'll find out going forward that they're actually now a non-contributing property. But yeah, the idea is that reviewing that, giving opportunity for people to take a look at that. And there's a process in here outlined, I believe, for requesting a redesignation of your property. So people have that option. But yeah, so that was kind of the biggest first thing I wanted to run by the board was feedback on the whole staff review element. So we're still keeping all of the exemptions that we talked about last time, but adding a staff review component for smaller scale projects to non-contributing buildings. Happy to make any changes or,
Yeah, could I just ask one question about the exemptions since
Yeah.
we're there, which is G.
Yes.
G, and so roof-mounted solar panels, I understand, but heat pumps or other mechanical appurtenances, that roof-mounted does not apply to that, or it does apply? Do you mean roof-mounted heat pumps or heat pumps?
I didn't write it, so I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and clarify.
Maybe
Well,
that's
to
it.
me,
Well,
roof-mounted heat pumps would be no problem, but if the word was heat pumps and it could be at street level, you could start putting mechanical right in.
You're putting me in legal jeopardy right now.
I think it-
Just so you know.
What, you?
Yeah, I have a heat pump mounted on the outside of my house.
On
It's technically it's visible from the right of way. I don't think anybody's fired up about it.
right.
I am benefiting, and now it's on the
Told
record.
all your
I should've
neighbors
kept
how to
my
get you.
Mouth shut, But that's the sort of thing that, it's a great question. It's a great question.
All right, so,
Okay. I will check on it.
I have sort of a similar comment, actually, about the language in the applicability section. I think a few times it says, any addition to a non-contributing building. I'm looking at section 4, subsection 2, and item B. So it's any addition to a non-contributing building over 500 square feet visible. I would move the over 500 square feet part to after addition, so it would read any addition over 500 square feet to a non-contributing building, because the way it reads now, there's ambiguity as like which one, is it a non-contributing building that is big enough, and then any addition would qualify?
I understand, yeah. That's good call.
Okay.
And
I can change that
that's
throughout.
repeated,
Yeah.
a couple times.
Yeah.
I had, it's slightly bigger question, I guess, for, in that same subsection, for item number, or letter C, any construction of a new principal building or accessory building over 500 square feet, visible from a public right-of-way. I wonder if there is like some way of exempting certain smaller buildings that are set back a certain distance, like, because I think that's part of
Visible could mean the very back of your property.
yeah, like
In the back of a
technically
gar-
visible, and I think that's one of the things that we've heard from the project review board is like, sometimes if somebody wants to do, it might be like right on the limit, maybe it's a 500 square foot garage or something, but it's way back on that. And actually, full disclosure, I have nothing that is firm or and no open application, but I have, long story that I will spare you all the details, but basically we have a lot that's behind our house that's a separate lot, and a part of it is in design review. And so theoretically, if we were to put a shed or an accessory building in that part, it would be subject to design review, but it's like in the woods,
There are a lot of cases where people come in and say like, hey, I'm doing this change. So I'm like, all right, is it visible from the right of way? And they say, I don't know. So I go out and I walk, or I look at Google Street View, and I have to make some judgment if it is or not. And I'm like, well, if you look at it on this day without cars there and, without foliage and all these other things, maybe you can see the corner of a roof or something. And is that the intent, or is it fine?
Sam's point is a good one. Is there some way to?
is there some way to codify that? basically?
So would you want there to still be a size cap even in those situations? Like, a garage of 700 square feet is fine, but, now, let's say there's 1,000 square foot home towards the front, and someone's going to build a second home out back that's 3,000 square feet, and.
Yeah, I think it would still require some,
And then would it go to staff review or be completely exempt?
I think like kicking each thing down a level might be appropriate. And I don't know, it's
How about generally giving the planner discretion when there's de minimis visual impact?
That's de minimis visual impact. That's really
In the
good.
judgment of the town planner.
I'll have to think of a way to word that
Go with that.
doesn't, yeah. All right. I can work on something and then bring it back. I understand the point of
Yeah.
what you're saying, because I agree, there are a lot of those.
yeah, I think, and the goal is like, I love going before the PRB. It's one of my favorite hobbies. So it gives me real insight into this process. So it's like, yeah, I could understand this sort of self-serving spin on this. But some of the feedback that we've heard from the PRB is that, they do see a lot of these kind of small things where they feel like, why are we doing this? And so if there's a way to make a common sense exemption, I'm in favor of that. Not exemption, but a downgrading.
Yeah.
Kyle, do you want to know about typos when we're on a page containing a typo?
I think we can. I think if people have a ton of those sorts of comments, it might be easier for board members to send me an email in a list of them. But as we're going through, if there's just a comment here and there, I can update it real quick.
Well, I don't have a ton, but At the end of section 1, under 4 applicability, it's exempt. Should be from review rather than form review.
Oh, yep. All right. And then, so the other thing I wanted to talk about, I guess that we can talk about under applicability as well, is my first bullet point under the kind of policy question part of my memo, is the idea of site features. So when North Star was putting this together, we have some standards. This is kind of two-parter. There's some standards related to site features. So like we have the whole idea of parking needing to be to the side or the rear of buildings. But then as far as things that trigger actually needing to come forward with a design review application, expanding a parking area isn't one of those things. So, right, if we're regulating that when a new building is going in, then should we not also be taking a look at it if someone is doing just a parking lot expansion? So we're saying if you're putting in a new multifamily building, your parking has to be to the side and the rear. But let's say someone has an existing multifamily building and they want to expand their parking lot, and that's all they're doing, and they say, all right, I'm going to put the parking lot out front, but there's nothing triggering design review, so those standards don't apply, and now they can build parking out front. It doesn't.
And not meet any of the other standards.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make a ton of sense. I don't think that would happen too often.
Yeah, where's that going to happen?
There could be a couple, lots or around, but it's a bigger picture question, because then there's this other idea of should site features trigger review at all? So right now in design review, material change to site features do trigger review. And site features is called out as, walkways, fences, parking lots, all that sort of stuff.
Could you elaborate
don't-
on all that sort of stuff? Because that may.
Well, so it could, I think it's like a such as but not limited to. So it could be anything that's basically not the building.
I'm a wealth of examples tonight, but if anybody drives by my house and notices an enormous piece of granite sitting on a pallet in my front yard,
So it could be
that I can't install
a
until I get it.
walkway, a fountain,
Sitting there.
bike parking,
One step?
Yeah.
What was that?
You asked? And you asked?
No, it's just, it hasn't been installed yet, so
Why not?
But you had to get permission.
I would have to get permission to.
Why?
So. Because I got out over my skis with too many projects and not enough time to get them all approved. But I got one of them approved last month, so that was
All right,
my
but-
big.
So right now, there's nothing in here. We don't have any standards for any of these things. So I don't know, I wouldn't want to make walkways and fences and changes to those things require design review if we don't have any standards to review it against. So if we do want those things
And I
to trigger design review.
It's a feature on the landscape that is just like every other feature on the landscape that we're talking about. It should be, if you want it to be a certain way, it should be regulated in a certain way. Otherwise, you're going to get fencing that you might not like, that.
There's nothing in here there's nothing anywhere that describes fencing?
No, there's no standard that says fences should be this material and this style, or there's nothing in here that says walkways should be this material.
Well,
And
Yeah, I mean, the
you
only,
just mentioned three things: walkways, fences, and parking lots. And to me, they're a little bit different. Like walkways, I'm not sure anybody cares.
Yeah.
Maybe you do. So he does. Okay.
This
So
is
we've
another place-
routinely allowed, like the PRB has looked at these projects before, people will replace like brick with concrete or something, and
Right.
they approve that. So I think if,
No standard that says concrete or.
right. So we would, if we wanted to review those sorts of things, we would have to get into the details
Somebody wants
of
to make
what.
their front walk asphalt, and it's going to look really.
yeah,
bad.
or like, I don't know, like something that's like teal,
Wrong,
on a,
yeah.
Crushed, I don't know,
Has the
whatever.
town ever disapproved a walkway or a fence?
Not since I've been here, but, well,
I think
we
it's
haven't done
been-
any fence reviews since I've been here, so I
The
don't-
only fence mention in here now is to say that fences less than 5 feet
Right.
and constructed of wood are
Right,
exempt,
so-
right?
right.
But there's nothing to say, if you're not exempt, then you have to meet these.
Right, and that's in there because it carries over from our existing
Right.
exemptions in our current ordinance. Because currently, a fence over 5 feet would have to go to the board for a design review certificate.
Think it
But if-
should.
Well, right, but so what I'm saying is if we want to have that go to the board, then we'll need to carve out somewhere in here where we need to create the language for those standards because the consultant did not add that in.
Yeah, I mean,
So I need some direction if the
this
board
is
wants.
another one
not
where
okay.
I think another, so like a kind of a part way, like a partial solution to at least lower the pressure on us maybe, or lower the pressure on people or at least reduce the number of projects that would trigger this, is to include like a setback standard here too, to say like if your walkway is within 50 feet of the public view or something like that, then you have to have it reviewed under these standards. And if it's more than 50 feet, and I think also the front facade, I really like the idea of
The front
like requiring accessory
Right.
buildings and garages to be set back from the front facade, I think is important, and we've come back to that over the years. That's in the Freeport Overlay District. I think it's one of the best single things in the Freeport Overlay District. So I think a similar, if you are 50 feet back and behind the primary facade, then you don't have to do this. But otherwise, I think we could probably develop some relatively simple standards just to say they have to be made of, I don't know, come up with a
Put
materials
up a
list. that's-
10-foot chain link fence is we have to decide what we don't, what's
Exactly.
not
Chain link
okay.
fence.
Right, what are we trying to prevent?
Yeah, so I
I'm not sure you
can,
want anything other than a 5 feet or less made of wood, just what's already allowed. I don't, and you might say that's it. But we don't have to discuss that now, but you're right, you need standards then.
so is the general feeling that you would want some standards for things like walkway and fences? And then secondly, changes to those things you would also want to go through. And we can talk about whether, that
PRB.
gets in staff review or PRB, I think depending on how clear we are with those standards.
Right.
I don't care what their walkways are.
Yeah,
It's
I
not my
don't-
business.
Yeah, except you might not,
I won't walk on it then.
I mean, if you're just trying to make a cohesive look around town.
Yeah, if you're trying to make
you
cohesive
just
look
wanna
and all of a
try to
sudden
manage
people
that
had-
a little bit.
Yeah, but where'd that happen? Has it happened yet?
I think the it might be as simple as saying, don't pave your walkway.
yeah, don't pave your walkway.
With
That may be
black
the only thing
asphalt.
that might be weird.
Yeah.
Well, years ago, Freeport had a sidewalk ordinance, had to be macadam or cement, and all the brick sidewalks were in violation. They might still be, I don't know, but we went
Yeah.
around and put on brick sidewalks everywhere, but there was nothing in the ordinance to say that wasn't what's permitted. So,
Yeah. Yes, the walkways don't seem to,
I just think the guy that's building the building wants it to look nice, and, they spend a lot of money to build these buildings. I don't think they're gonna, blow it on making a cheap walkway, that's all. I mean, I gotta put a little trust in the developer.
Yeah. No, I think
well, no,
hopefully it can be as
the
simple.
case is somebody lives there, they have a house, their walkway's falling apart, they have to fix it for their own safety, and they fix it in a way that kind of ruins the look of the street, even in a contributing building. That's sort of the question, right? Or is this only non-contributing again? And even in a non-contributing building.
I assume you'd want it
is there
more
something
in
you don't
contributing
want?
than non-contributing. I mean, yeah, I would assume it's either both, or it would apply to contributing and not non-contributing.
Right.
But, yeah,
So
it's
it would
whatever.
apply to contributing, and it's like, why would you accept that?
Yeah, my tendency would be to say a low threshold that applies broadly with a setback threshold. Does that make sense? That's kind of where without putting like specific numbers. Setback, no, I mean, 50 feet feels like about right to me.
I can work on a standard, and you can,
Not worried about it.
Yeah, I mean, how about fences? How about the parking lot issue?
I'm not too upset about the parking lot, because I don't think anybody's gonna do it. Who's gonna eat up their front space to put a parking lot in the downtown? That's valuable space. Where have
But
we
the
seen
design
anybody
review
put a
is
parking lot in the
more-
front?
yeah, I would say it would be more likely, like the Village One allows multifamily.
this
Yeah,
doesn't
some of
work.
those lots are, there's some bigger lots, someone could potentially do something. Again, I don't necessarily think it's going to happen, I just think it's an inconsistency that,
Yeah, we all-
I think if it's, I mean, my guess is if it's fairly easy to solve with like one line, then it's not gonna hurt us.
Yep.
so I could come up with some language on the site feature stuff,
I think,
and
yeah.
then you can react to it. Either, take it out entirely because you decide you don't like it, or, you thought about it over the next couple months and come up with some specific ideas on materials or heights of fences, and we can change it from there. But I'll work to have basically like a placeholder in there to at least frame where it would go in the ordinance.
Yeah.
All right, so that's probably the two biggest things I wanted to talk about. The other one, we touched on a little bit. So, right now, new commercial, new mixed-use buildings, new multifamily buildings, they'd all be considered non-contributing. So they would have Section 6 standards apply, and they would also have Section 7 standards apply. But that's only if they're new buildings. So the one thing I think is missing there is if you had a addition to those buildings, then currently, the way the ordinance is drafted, it wouldn't have to abide by Section 7 standards. So, Section 7, I use the example, we have all these window standards. And so it stands to reason that you would want those same standards to apply to addition, especially if it's a large-scale addition.
Even the small,
Right, even a small
I mean, there's something about demolition under 40%, and I didn't understand even that. Like, if it's visible from the street, that's the intent of the ordinance.
Does anyone else have any thoughts, or is that the general,
I feel like consistency is a good goal,
Yeah.
generally, to say, okay, if we're doing it here and this conceivable project feels similar, then we regulate it similarly. And if it was reasonable the first time we regulated it, then it ought to be the second time too. That's my,
I mean, that should be as simple as just changing the header for Section 7 to include additions and alterations to non-contributing buildings, not just new construction. But specifically those uses, the multifamily, mixed-use, commercial, so it wouldn't apply to single-family homes, duplexes, those sorts of things. And as we'll talk about later in our other agenda item, the definition of what multifamily is going to change, so we can keep that in mind. All right, and then I think the last thing on my list to get feedback on was a smaller, more, specific question. The consultant had put in a standard in Section 7 when those new construction, larger projects go in, about the developer needing to construct new or repair existing sidewalk along the building frontage, now in the right-of-way. So that's outside of PRB scope because we're talking in the right-of-way, and the PRB is generally looking at the site itself. It also is adding an expense, adding an extra hurdle, for the developer.
Is this only for, it's existing there? Or would this be if you had an empty lot and it didn't have a sidewalk on it, it's saying you're going to put one there?
I think it's both. I mean, you go back to the standard, but I'm pretty sure if it's existing, you repair it if necessary, and
Was there
so all new development shall construct new and/or repair existing sidewalk along the frontage of the building. New sidewalk shall connect to the nearest existing sidewalk.
I think there should be an easement of some kind along the right-of-way, and it should be the town's responsibility to construct these sidewalks. Yeah, you're going to get a hodgepodge of materials, and, it's not going to be,
So I think if we left it in, we would want to, reference other ordinances that we have where, it would have to meet town standards and things like that. But yeah, that raises a good point. If we were going to keep this in, I think you'd want to clarify this. And you'd also want to add some language about like, well, what if there isn't a sidewalk for, the entire length of the
That's the whole point.
street?
Is there a plan for where sidewalks ultimately should or one wishes were?
I think
And
it's
if there
so-
isn't, it's,
But I think it's, yeah. I mean, the plan for sidewalks has to be at least somewhat responsive to development patterns that are not really in our or anyone else's control, right? If suddenly somebody, like some little village popped up where it made sense to have a sidewalk,
Or maybe the sidewalk pops up and the village then pops up.
should there be a
Kind of directing
sidewalk? Is there a sidewalk?
development, maybe.
There is not a sidewalk along Route 1 from Desert Road to the bridge, is there? There is
Only in
in
a couple
some
places,
parts,
yeah.
but not consistently.
not consistently. But I think that's where,
The Complete Streets group wants such thing.
that's where, like,
A plan that we're going to talk about on the 14th, we'll
Yeah.
discuss that.
it's been a thorn in, I mean, we've been talking about this, at least theoretically, for years, of like, how do you require somebody to build a sidewalk to nowhere?
Yeah.
What's the, and then I think I'm coming down where, exactly where Dave just mentioned, of like requiring the paper sidewalk.
Yeah.
To be part of the project, to say, to leave open the possibility of the sidewalk for the future, but to make I mean, generally it's sidewalk, like one of my kids' favorite things is when the sidewalk snow blower comes by our house in the morning, like it did this morning, right? They love that. It's the town's responsibility. The town does that. Like, developers are not clearing their own towns, like, the town fixes sidewalks, the town maintains the sidewalks. So I think it is reasonable to leave that in the town's purview, but it's still, there may be cases where it has to cross private property, or where there has to be some sort of like right-of-way arrangement. And so I think that's a more sensible way to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, there are times when an applicant might close a curb cut and they extend a sidewalk or a curb or something, and they propose to do that. This is really a question of whether you want to require developers to repair sidewalk outside of their property.
There's no developer that wouldn't repair the sidewalk outside their property. I can't imagine who
I mean,
wouldn't.
if you trample a sidewalk with concrete trucks during construction,
Yeah,
aren't you required to, yeah. I mean, I feel like beyond that,
Yeah,
Right, they're
it
the
shouldn't be
owner.
their responsibility to maintain sidewalks, for their little, everybody maintain their little section of sidewalk in a hodgepodge
you
pattern.
shouldn't be allowed to trash a town sidewalk, but otherwise I feel like.
So is general consensus just to delete this standard and leave it as town responsibility to?
Does the zoning leave the right-of-way?
Yeah.
What was that?
Does the zoning, does the plot plan leave the right-of-way? Does this town
Would there be
own
room to-
Does the town own that land?
Yeah. Yep. So
So
after the
anytime the
front
town
property
wished
line-
to put in sidewalks, they could.
You can't build in the right of way.
You can't build in the right-of-way.
Right.
There's no place where
Try,
that.
but you're not supposed to.
Right. So that.
Right, the applicant would only, their site plan that they get approved through the PRB is only up to their property boundaries. Occasionally, they'll, add a crosswalk or a ramp on a sidewalk that's in the right-of-way. And in those cases, we make it clear, the PRB is not reviewing that and approving that. They need to work with the Public Works Department or council to do that work.
I think there's a sidewalk ordinance that describes what it has to be made out of and how it has to be
Yeah, yeah.
maintained.
Yeah, we have street ordinance.
Yeah, yeah. I know there's a sidewalk, well, there was a sidewalk ordinance, what it was gonna be.
So if we deleted that, it would still be the same. If someone wanted to add a sidewalk in, front of their property in the right-of-way, they could have that conversation, but it would be with the council and staff. It wouldn't be through the PRB and design review and their.
In the right of way, yeah.
Yeah, in the
If they
right-
wanted to do a
If they-
sidewalk-looking thing on their own land, then that would just be a site feature.
Correct. I think one of our standards is, you're obligated to have certain placemaking features in your front setback. And one of those options is to do an expanded sidewalk. So let's say the town already had a sidewalk in the right-of-way. An applicant could expand the sidewalk in their front setback area, to use it for outdoor seating or whatever as a placemaking feature, but that's on their property, not in the right of way.
So,
That's their business.
Yeah, right. That's just one of the options they can do, and it's one of the things, like the downtown vision would call for, is to have a wider sidewalk for more placemaking features.
So right now, there is a requirement to install a sidewalk within,
No, it's just an option within your front setback. We have a standard, I
it
don't know.
says right here, 7.2C requires them to build a sidewalk.
Oh, yeah, that's the one we were talking about.
So
That's,
wait,
that's
so
the one I'm
before we-
questioning whether you want to keep that or not.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
talking
Oh,
about.
sorry,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, so, I mean, I see merit in keeping that requirement, because eventually, we'll get more sidewalks that way. And that's a
Well,
positive thing.
Or one other, I mean, I have the same thought as Wayne, before we throw this out. If the town has a vision of having sidewalks, and first of all, I'd like to know, is there a vision of where? Because maybe there is a vision from Desert Road to the bridge, but there isn't a vision from, I think maybe there's a vision the whole way.
I know, people
Well,
who
there's a-
live up on, like, Upper Mass Landing Road would love to, which is kind of the tail end of or the northern end, I should say, of the Village Corridor Initiative. Like, they would love to see
Well,
a sidewalk
but,
that far.
but down where you are, aren't they talking about putting it behind?
Yeah, I can't figure out what they're doing. They want to,
I mean, if they put it behind, then you don't need it on the road. And the road already has.
I don't know, some incomplete streets stand up, said they got to have a sidewalk all the way to the Y because kids have got to walk to the Y. No kids walk to the Y. They ride in the bus or their
Right.
parents take them. So we got
Well,
one
I guess
piece
the
of
other thing
My-
is-
My point is, if the goal of the town was to build the sidewalks, first of all, I mean, what's weird about this is if you wind up being forced to build a sidewalk to nowhere, that seems stupid. But
It
it
needs
doesn't seem stupid to, I mean, many towns collect impact fees of one type or another. And if you said to every developer, you have to pay for that sidewalk, then and you pay it to the town, and then the town builds it if and when it wants, you could always do that. You could always,
Yeah, I question whether the place for that is in the design review ordinance or, we have.
probably not in the design review ordinance.
Yeah,
But
right.
But you don't want to lose it
Yeah.
if there's if the town has a vision to pay for it, it's not unreasonable to ask developers to do that.
All right,
Yeah, I do think right, a better
We're
place is
outside of our
either in
purview
the
here?
site plan. No, I think it's a relevant standard
Yep.
that, I think a better place for it would be as a site plan requirement. Like we have that requirement for subdivisions, but not necessarily for site plans in all parts of town.
that's kind of what
It
I'm,
shouldn't be necessarily in all parts of town. It should be in very specific areas in this area.
that's kind of where I'm coming down on it as I start to think this through in a little bit more depth and hearing the different perspectives. I mean, I think because it's in section 7, right, it applies.
It only apply to larger projects.
Yeah, it only applies to larger projects. So there's a tendency, we hope, that most of those larger projects would go in areas like, Depot Street is the one that springs to mind, most quickly. There are sidewalks on both sides of everything,
Yep,
right?
right.
So, and then if there were going to be a larger development in one of the residential neighborhoods, like on Elm Street or, I don't know, Park Street, it's not design, whatever. One of these smaller neighborhoods now that doesn't have sidewalks, it does feel to me like, while it would be great to have a sidewalk and encourage it, I'm not sure it should be included as part of the,
People may not want it.
part of the burden for the developer
Street.
at this stage. It feels like
If
it
there's
should.
going to be a sidewalk goes in somewhere, it should go in all at the same time in one effort, not in 25 different efforts by each little landowner or by, 5 efforts by the landowners and then with gaps all over the place.
And I think the other
Doesn't make any
thing,
sense.
the other important thing to point out here is this is separate from this very same discussion on Route 1 South, which is like similar, talking about going down to.
There's
the
a similar
Y.
standard in
There's a similar
527.
standard in 527, and it may not be the same answer for that corridor down there. This is specific to design review. and the way that
Right, this is
downtown-
only in
Right.
downtown.
So this
but-
is only in downtown, where there are a lot of sidewalks already, and most of the places where this standard would apply already have a sidewalk for the types of projects that I think it would
And
make
if they
sense. I don't think anybody would suggest
If
that.
they
like-
don't, you wouldn't want
It's
to
an
force it.
exemption.
Yeah.
If there's no, I don't know.
Yeah. So, and I think, like, I don't think anybody would say, like, if you're building a single-family house, you should have to spend, like, I don't know how much the sidewalk costs.
Well, we got to make sure it doesn't say that.
No, it
Right, it doesn't say that.
And the
So,
side streets, they may not want sidewalks. They may like the look of, I don't think everybody's has a vision that it all has sidewalks.
I guess I'm in favor of taking it out of design review and dealing with it, if necessary, in other places. Does that feel palatable to other folks? Wayne, I know it's,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, I just think in the absence of an overall plan to put sidewalks where they belong, this is something that contributes to that goal. Even if you have stranded sidewalks, eventually it gets filled in, so I think that's the policy I would favor, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels to me like a complete
Why are we
streets-
talking about sidewalks if there isn't a plan for sidewalks?
It feels like a
should
complete
be.
streets thing.
But if there is a plan, then this is a weapon to pay for it.
Not that Route 1 South doesn't count
Tool.
here, but we had a development come when Mass Landing Beer was gonna go up behind Sunrise Cafe. And when they got to the planning board, or the project review, or was the town planner said, you gotta run a sidewalk the whole length of your lot. So clear from above Thai Gardens all the way down the other end. The guy said, no deal. I'm on a tight budget now. You want a sidewalks in the right of way, you build it. So, so that could happen anywhere. And the other thing you gotta think about sidewalks is it's not just putting up a piece of curbing, but you gotta figure out, are you gonna have underground drainage, and what are you gonna do about all this other stuff? And that's really a DOT, it's a public works issue. How's the drainage gonna work? How many catch basins are we gonna have? Where the runoff's gonna be? And that shouldn't be passed off on the developer. That's a town issue.
Yep.
I do think the impact fee thing is worth exploring. I mean, that's kind of a middle ground of where you're having new development contribute to it, but it can support
puts the
planned
town-
out projects
A slush
that
fund for
can
that sort of-
Well, the other
accomplish
thing
a
is the
specific goal
dog
all
bone
at once.
TIF may pay for that.
Yeah, I mean,
In any case,
Where it
I'm
matters.
feeling more and more like it's,
Want me to give an update on what we're doing?
Is that the answer, that it would pay for it where it matters?
Yeah, so I think.
do you have a mic, Brett?
No, I'll walk up real quick. Just
Kind of
to
sounds
give
like,
you-
yeah, it's like a funny, like, reflection.
So this is a great discussion, and I just want to provide some context. So the Village Corridor Initiative is going to be laying out a build-out analysis that we'll talk about on the 14th together, and that's going to inform a coordinated development design. So they're going to show where areas are well-suited for collector streets, if it's appropriate, for sidewalks, and map out how to efficiently use that land. So you're going to get some insight on, to your point, David, sort of where they would go and what the right place would be. And if it makes sense going forward, there could be a private-public partnership opportunity where development happens with the town providing infrastructure through TIF funding that Mitch just mentioned. The council approved a TIF extension that is now at the state, expected to be approved by the state relatively shortly. And the council's also endorsed the creation of a new TIF district that would cover the Village Corridor study area. So just so you guys understand, as you're having this discussion, there are discussions happening about how to think about the corridor as a whole, how the town could provide public infrastructure that incentivizes good development that we want to see. And then there's also the funding mechanisms through TIFs that one is already sort of adopted and moving forward, and the other one's in the pipeline and being scoped for next year. So you guys are on the right track. It's going to come together.
All of which says
Brett,
it
can we,
can
can we ask for your opinion to put you on the spot for a second?
Yeah,
Does this
sure.
feel like something that should be outside of the design review? Like it's be better served elsewhere in town ordinances?
I think it's good to talk about. I think it's a relevant point that the district has shrunk now. So some of the areas that we're talking about where sidewalks don't exist, this would be more relevant. I think if I were in your position with a lot to talk about, I think you've identified the trade-offs. I think you've identified the considerations and the issues that you're going to want to weigh in on. it might be worthwhile to wait a month to hear from the consultants on the downtown, on the Village Corridor Initiative, to understand that more fully, before you start to make firm decisions about how you want to go. I don't want to slow down Kyle's process, but I think you guys are on the right track. You'll have some more information soon that will help you make a good understanding of how what you're doing ties into the funding and also the infrastructure.
Can we flag it for likely removal? Is that like a fair
Yeah, it
place?
still
to leave it?
sounded like it probably could come out of here and
Wouldn't be
not
separated.
harm the
Yep.
goal of sidewalks.
We can talk about it more, I mean, like.
Yeah.
Brett said,
I do
like,
want to move on
this-
tonight because I know we have a lot to
This
go.
isn't going to be wrapped up
Yeah.
in the next month anyway, so, we have time to think about it.
Great points all around the way.
All right, so that was it for my point. So for this, like I said, next steps for me would be to take this, we've already actually sent it back to the consultant to have the graphics inserted and the map attached. So at this stage, I would just open it up to the board for any other comments on changes that you want to see at this stage.
We want to just go.
Or people can
down
send
through.
flag
And
me.
I would say so. So let's try to set like a ground rule for what should and should not come up here. So if it's like, I have several places where it's like, I would put a comma there or not. I don't think we need to talk about that necessarily. Or if it's a typo, I think those probably just go straight to Kyle. But I think if there's a wordsmithing thing where there's a meaning that's unclear or certainly a suggestion of an addition or a change. Obviously, we want to talk about those. So starting, I guess, at the top, unless anyone else has a suggestion for how to alter the procedure. No?
I just have like 4 or 5, but
Yeah,
like
cool.
that.
All right, so anyone on page 1? Page 2?
The only comment I have on page two was, in some of the definitions, you have both words, mechanical pertinence, the A is not capitalized, in others, you have capitalized, non-contributing building.
Yep,
Partial demolition is uncapped, so just stuff like that.
okay.
The only one I have here, which is kind of on the border of something to send straight to Kyle, I would, under non-contributing building, I would probably strike the words from the 19th century through 1950 and just leave it at, a non-contributing building is any building or structure that does not have significant historical value because, oh, sorry, I had another comment on this one too. Now I'm going to have to remember.
Because, right, I mean, what if it was just contributing buildings, are those listed in Appendix A, and non-contributing are those listed in Appendix A? Because I had that same question there.
So it's, yes, so it does not have significant historical value because they neither date from the district's period of significance nor represent an architectural type, period, or construction method, which is historically significant. And then I would put a comma, I know I just said, but this one potentially changes the meaning a little bit, or has been so significantly altered that it has been determined to retain no historical values. I would just remove
From the 19th.
yeah, because I think we cover that other places, and then I think that comma clarifies. And then I'll be quiet on commas, I promise.
Done. Easy.
All right, anyone else on that page? Page 3?
Page 3, maybe it's on page 2 as well, but I noticed it on page 3, period of significance, is that defined anywhere? Or, I mean, that could be, people could decide something significant.
It's in the purpose, so it's not a definition, but the purpose outlines the period of significance from, which was why Sam just talked about removing it
Oh,
from there.
district's period, okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yep, got it.
I think all the stuff that I had on page 3, we covered earlier. So on page 4, one of my favorite things that I've come back to over the years on design review, and specifically on windows, is section 4 exemptions, and then D, where it says replacement or insert windows. Right at the end, I think if it says, when the existing windows have muntins, the existing light pattern shall be maintained with true or simulated divided lights that have physical bars on the exterior of the glass. this is my pet distinction,
I-
because there's a difference.
The interior or just,
If it's just the interior spacer bar, it doesn't do the same thing. And so I think if we're regulating this, it's worth, and it's not, it's not a huge upcharge if you're getting a replacement window. So, like, you can get the physical bar on the exterior of the glass. It makes a big difference. It's worth requiring, to me, under the exemptions. Like, if we're going to say this is exempt, like if you, for whatever reason, want to say, hey, I want this different window, then go to the PRB and let them, chew you apart for trying to get away with interior spaces.
Yeah, that is one of the ones taken right from our ordinance now, so, yeah, we can clarify that at the end.
so I got one thing right in this same place. Where it says in the very same area right above where it says the existing light pattern shall be maintained.
Yep.
And then look at E, where it says, talking about now siding and trim, and the profile remain the same. And in both those cases, I wondered whether you needed something like substantially the same, because sometimes it may not be reproducible. And
And
the
do you have to-
intent, I'm down with the intent, I just am worried that you may be requiring something that's,
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. The tough one
It's
part,
little.
I will say that, the flip side is that these are exemptions. So when someone comes in, who's defining substantially? And what is
oh, it
substantial?
is an exemption, so in other words, the minute it's not the same,
Yeah.
it's just no
It's
longer
not that it's not
exempt.
allowed, they would just
It's-
have to, yeah.
Okay.
yeah, I think that's
That
the
solved my problem.
thing for me is like, then it gets kicked up to the town planner review, hopefully, or some.
Yeah, if it was a contributing building, it would go to the PRB. If it was a non-contributing, it would go, an alteration like
Okay,
that would be
okay.
a staff
Okay,
review.
that's okay.
But yeah, I would not want to be the one necessarily, especially on a contributing building, needing to determine what substantially the same was.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I like, in there, I feel like there's just enough wiggle room for a homeowner or somebody to say, you know what, this is the same. Like, it's the same. It
Yeah,
might,
right.
under if you put your calipers on it,
Well,
maybe
that's
not, but like,
that's my
but it's
point.
the same, and I'm gonna take this risk, and I'm fine with it. And I feel that's a risk that I would, and actually probably have taken on my house, like replacing clapboards, where I can't get clapboards that are milled in 1860 anymore, so I have to use the replacement one. It's like,
All right, let's
they're
move
close
on.
enough. I had a question on a letter H there, where it's exemptions.
Offenses.
Yeah, is an engineered wood alternative, I like the spirit of it. I worry that there might be too much ambiguity there where somebody says, well, vinyl is an engineered product and it's a wood alternative, so is it an engineered wood? I don't know.
Again, we have no fencing standards, right? Is vinyl permitted or not permitted?
It's
Yeah, we
agnostic.
have no
Vinyl
standard. right?
never, looks
Yeah.
better usually.
And like I said, I mean, been here a little over a year, we haven't had any new fences go to the PRB, so I can't really weigh in on exactly what the PRB guidance or practice has been there.
I'm probably fine to just leave it if nobody feels strongly about it for now. It's another one if somebody wants to take that risk. On the next page, does anybody else have anything on page 4?
No, my next one is on 6B.
I had a question on page 5. I think demolition, the very first thing on the page. It says demolition or partial demolition of a contributing building requires a design review certificate, which is a little confusing that it, never mind. I confused myself. I'm sorry, just ignore everything I said.
Okay.
Now you get it?
I thought, I was reading it as like somehow under the exemptions, which is
No, it's a new,
not. It
a
is
new subsection.
New subsection. I don't
of
know how I made
applicability.
that switch in my head, but I did.
Yeah, so we have the standard projects, then exemptions,
Yeah.
because those are kind of what.
No, this is a new subsection. I just,
We're still in the, Yeah.
It's still applicability, so it's saying that if you demolish or partially demolish, you have to follow that waiting period outlined in section 9, where there's like a 3-month notice.
If it's a contributing building.
Right, only if it's contributing.
It makes perfect sense. I just missed the outdent.
Okay, could I talk about 6B for a second?
Page 6.
See, right there on page 5.
Yep.
Number 6, we're section 4, 6B.
The maintenance.
Yes, nothing in this ordinance will prevent the construction, reconstruction if there's a safety issue. And my problem about that is, so if there's a safety issue, all rules are off? There's a
No,
safety issue?
It's construction of a feature, so it's a specific feature. So I'll say that this language is taken straight from our current ordinance. This isn't new.
Well, could you just watch the language? I'm not sure what it's.
Maybe alteration should be removed?
The reconstruction of anything, first of all, wouldn't necessarily apply anyway.
Yeah, generally reconstruction could be construed as maintenance, right? Like ordinary maintenance.
Well, you could reconstruct something different.
That's the point. In other words, just because there's a public safety issue and you're now reconstructing it, why does, this seems to say now the whole ordinance doesn't apply if you have a safety issue.
But so
Maybe
I wonder
I'm
if
reading it wrong.
what sort of safety issue are we talking about, maybe?
Okay, we
Because-
talked before about walkways. I'll use that as an example, even if we decide we don't care about walkways. So your walkway is unsafe, now all of a sudden, because you're rebuilding your walkway, because of a safety issue, you no longer have to follow the guidelines. A side of your building is falling down, and you need to repair it before it falls down. Does this ordinance apply or not?
I'd be lying if I said I hadn't considered that possibility. Again, on my house. Hey, this is falling over. Should I just
I
fix
think
it?
the way this has been interpreted by staff in the past has been, it's got to be a like-for-like change. If
As
you're,
long as it says that, as long as it says, as long as it's like for like, then that's done. It just, what if it's not like for like?
I think there's something.
right,
in
then you would
another-
need to meet the normal.
Whatever,
process,
right.
yeah.
There's something, I mean, it's sort of an analogous situation. I think it's in the building code itself where you are allowed to make an emergency repair, but you have to, like, the code won't stand in the way of you making it as long as you submit for the permit as you're doing it, or like the next day or something. So basically, like, if you discover that, or something like a truck runs in your, whatever, and you realize that a beam is cracked, you can fix it, but it is a structural repair that needs to be, either engineered or at least inspected and meet code. And so you don't have to get a permit before you fix it, but you do have to get the permit. And so it's just like a one-sentence thing that says, you can do this, but you have to make sure that you're applying for the permit. So maybe something similar could apply here, where it says,
Yeah, but if
public
you-
safety issue can be rectified as long as a permit is underway or
But
something.
if you read this, it really says, any demolition of such feature which a code enforcement officer shall certify as required by public safety because of an unsafe. Doesn't say you can go up and say it. It's the code office has to come up and say.
Yeah, it's a pretty strict
Your house is-
finding that this
your
isn't
porch is
just,
falling in up here, and we're not going to let you.
I get it, but it would only be in those particular cases, and the code enforcement officer said, your porch is falling down.
That's right.
You must repair it.
Yeah.
Do you have to repair it to meet the design guidelines or not? Or could you just say, hey, I'm repairing it my way because this can't prevent me?
Yeah, maybe.
That's the.
it's never how it's been
something really
interpreted, yeah.
small, but
I can look at it,
stupid maybe,
adjusting
but-
the language, yeah.
I think it's a
Don't
fair
worry about
point. It's, yeah, if it's an easy fix.
Yeah,
Great.
I don't think it's fine.
We just don't want to change, we don't want to change, if this is the way it's written somewhere else in the ordinance, we got to figure out,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
we don't want to have two different languages in the ordinance. do we?
Oh, I was saying, so this is what's currently in design review, so we would,
And when it says nothing in this ordinance, it would be specifically nothing in design review. It wouldn't also extend to zoning.
Yeah,
So
I can talk to
shouldn't
I'm not worried about it.
Yep. All right. Who has the next thing? Anything else on page 5? Moving to page 6.
I have a question on page 6. So the project review board may require a peer review design or other consultant. How necessary is that, and how much could that cost? There's no limit here, and the applicant has to pay for it.
So I think, this is in our ordinance now. It's similar to things in our site plan ordinance. The situation where this would come up, it hasn't come up on any project I've been on, but I imagine if there was a contributing building of great historical significance and, there was a finding that they should be building a feature a certain way, and the board isn't made up of experts and architects or preservationists, they would want some expert professional to weigh in. Just like on the site plan side, the site plan ordinance gives the PRB the ability to require an additional study being done by a hydrologist or a traffic engineer or something like that, if a specific issue arises. So it's just sort of a general ability that gives the board the authority to, if they feel like they don't have enough information or they're not an expert to make a decision on a certain finding, they can use this as a way to require the applicant
Right.
hire an expert.
Yeah. It is open-ended. I mean, it could conceivably be extremely.
It could be a time-
it could be wielded as a weapon, for
Right,
sure.
it could be a time delay, and it could be
Yeah.
an expense. And, I thought the project review board consisted of people who knew how to make these decisions on their own, so.
Well, they make the decision, but, on site plan projects, the board isn't necessarily a civil engineer. They're making findings on stormwater. They rely on applicant engineers to submit something, and then the town's peer review engineer to review that document. They're not traffic engineers. They're not architects, so.
And that, what you just described, all the consultants are fairly paid for. It's clear they would need an engineer, and your town engineer will review their engineering.
Sometimes, but in site plan, it's similar, where there's a general provision. There could be a very unique project that doesn't trigger an automatic submission requirement. There could be something, there could be a general standard around water quality or something, and maybe the normal submissions don't, require some sort of study being submitted, but the board needs that information to make a decision. It's fairly common. I understand what you're saying, but it's not a unique standard, I guess is what I want to say. This is something general you'll see with any kind of site plan ordinance or, board ordinance.
Is it possible to limit it to certain issues or limit the amount of the expense involved?
Expense might be.
A project could be a large project. I don't know how you can.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like that would be difficult, but
Percentage of a project?
I'm sure there's a way to narrow down the scope of it so it can't be just widely used as a way to slow down a project.
Yeah, that's my point. It's a little bit open-ended here.
They dragged this poor guy next door through the muck with a bunch of that stuff.
Yeah.
Sure did.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not, there have been other examples of this consultant, that consultant, it can get to the point, and then it's all of a sudden you have too many opinions, and then you need somebody to review the opinions, it's like, yeah, it's a tricky one. I'm not opposed to it the way it is, but I guess I certainly see your point, Wayne, where it's like my lack of opposition is probably due to the relative lack of issue that.
Oh, I should have read this more closely too as we were discussing it. So really, this isn't saying that the board is going to ask something of the applicant. It's saying that the board is going to have staff find someone to peer review or review something submitted by the applicant. So let's say there's a contributing building and a homeowner is proposing to make a change and they're not certified, they're not an architect, they're not a historic preservationist. The board, also none of those things could say, we don't know on this specific topic. Let's have town staff reach out to a historic preservationist to weigh in on this issue. So it's not telling the applicant to go out and get an architect so much as the board asking for expert assistance to review something.
But the cost could be-
And then the memo, we do this all the time, right, with landscape architects or something like that. Happened with the sewer district project, right? The board made a condition that they have a landscape architect, that there's a plan, and then the town would have a peer review landscape architect review the plan. So they did that, they drafted a memo, they give it back to staff or the board, and we say, okay, it's fine.
It says here, that project may require.
Yeah.
So that means the applicant's got to pay.
Right.
Right,
But I
the
think
applicant
it's-
bears the cost, right.
but, yeah, I mean, it does,
So it's almost worse than making the applicant find a consultant, because the town has all the choice, and then the cost gets all passed on to the applicant. So the applicant has no control of the costs that you're incurring, which seems to me to be
other
a-
than to just like back out of the project, which
Right.
presumably is not a great solution for anyone.
I would like to see some limits on this.
Right, but alternatively, the board would potentially just deny the project
Yeah, yeah.
based on not having enough information to make whatever. I want to say that I don't think this is something widely used by the board. I think it's a very specific issue, but I mean,
Right.
that
Well,
would.
that's why I was saying maybe you could narrow it down to those specific issues that
Yep.
are likely to trigger the need for something like this.
Narrow down scope.
Yeah, I mean, I could see like, I apologize, I always go to my house because that's my frame of reference here, because, but like, I have not hired, I've done several of these things now. Like, I did the site plan amendment, and I did it myself, because I have just barely enough of the skills to put together these things, mark up a PDF and put some stuff on a plan and do the survey and do the scale drawing and all that stuff. But like, I'm not an engineer. And so if the board had said, well, we need to see a stormwater plan, or at least we need an engineer to look at this and say, yeah, sure, this is going to be fine. It's still probably going to be a pretty good outcome for me where like I put in some of my own time, but rather than paying $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 for a stormwater management plan, I get an engineer that the town hires to look at it for 2 hours. And, it costs me a few $100, and it's like a better approach than requiring upfront a full. So, I don't know. I'm not super opposed to it, but I think if there's an easy way to narrow it down, then.
I put the comment in there.
Okay.
And so I'll look at ways of potentially narrowing the scope so it's not just this tool that can be broadly used all the time.
Thank you.
Okay. I had a question on the next one, the application contents, right at the top. Says the application for design review certificate shall contain at minimum the information below unless any submission requirements are waived by the project review board. I think we should add or the town, like it should be possible for the reviewing authority to waive. So like if it's under town planner review, then the town planner should be the one who's able to waive submission requirements. Is that correct?
I would disagree. I wouldn't want to, so for staff approvals, it should be very straightforward,
Okay.
by the book changes that can be easily reviewed and there's no kind of questionable judgment calls being made. I would say that if an applicant was desiring a waiver, because they wanted to make an argument that something wasn't needed, that would kick it up to the PRB for review, and then they could be the ones to decide if there should be a waiver or not. I'll say at least half of the things in here are satisfied just by filling out the application form. And then other things like right title and interest always has to be done.
It's more so like, so plans and exterior elevations, if the project requires a design review certificate, but does not have an elevation to draw, if it's like, that doesn't include a
Right.
building or something like that, I mean, like a really strict reading of this would have,
So if something wasn't applicable, I think that's different
That's different
than.
then, okay.
Right, if if something just wasn't needed because it didn't apply, I think the applicant could just make a statement in the application saying, this specific thing isn't applicable because there is no change. Like if it's a site feature change and you're saying, well, we're not going to provide exterior elevation because we're not
It's a rock.
doing any
Yeah,
buildings,
okay.
then they could just state that.
Okay. Do we have to say that? Or, I mean, I know you're reasonable and
Yep.
you would make, but I wonder if we need to say like,
We could,
unless they're unapplicable or something.
right, unless any submission requirements are waived by the project reviewer, or they are.
Inapplicable.
Yeah.
Applicable to the project.
Yep, okay.
That's good clarification, though.
Yep.
I appreciate the context there, too. All right, anyone else on page 6 or 7?
On 7, section 6, site design, number 1, wait, I lost my place here. Oh, yeah, I'm talking about B, 1B. It seemed to me a little inconsistent about how prescriptive it is, because, you use the phrase greatest extent possible in the first sentence. And the second sentence is more prescriptive, and I'm not sure if they conflict at all. And I was wondering if you wanted to have that flexibility that's implied in the first sentence, but not in the second.
Yeah. Shall be to the greatest extent possible. Yeah, my comment on this one, too, let's see, I have to reread it. Yeah, so I'm, and this may end up relating to your comment too, Wayne, I'm not sure I understand the second part of that sentence. All parking shall be located to the side or rear of the building nearest to the front property line.
Oh, so I added the side or rear of the building nearest to the front property line because there could be multiple buildings on the site. So
Right.
imagine like 2 buildings, one behind the
Right.
other. So it's trying to get at, we don't want parking in front of the front building, between the building and the street, but parking between the 2 buildings would be okay.
And I think I see, I think I understood that after a little bit of thought.
Yeah, I could
However, my follow-on comment then is, in my reading of it, then if you say you had 3 buildings, but you actually wanted your parking at the back, my reading of this says that you can't do that. You have to put it, shall be located to the side or rear of the one building that's nearest to the property line. So it actually takes some of that flexibility away. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So my thought was, I know what you're getting at,
Yeah.
but I think it just needs to be tweaked to say, to give some flexibility. Like, it can't be closer to the street than the closest primary facade, or something like that.
Yeah.
Why is nearest to the front property line even a goal?
It's just I think it's just a way to try to call out the,
Yeah, it's just meant to say that the parking shouldn't go between the road and
the primary
the
facade.
building.
I think primary facade would be a good call out there, just because it is a defined term, and I think it would, right? I think it would achieve, I think it gets at what we're
Yeah.
trying to, that's what, it's like the garage thing, or accessory building thing, like, it's got to be set back behind the primary facade, away from the street.
All right, I will
There you go,
reword
we're
it.
at the very next one, right?
I could also, so Wayne, to your comment, do we want to remove greatest extent possible from the first sentence? I mean, the idea is that the parking is to the side and the rear. The only thing in front of the building is a driveway. So,
Right. And since it's new construction, when would it not be possible? It's always going to be possible, right?
so it's not, this isn't just new construction, it's for additions and alterations as well.
Okay.
So,
So there could be
yeah, so, yeah, there could be an existing parking area that's in the front, so,
All right.
I mean, I guess.
Do you want to make an exemption for existing parking areas?
I imagine the intent of the consultant to say greatest extent possible was to account for some weird site natural condition where it's impossible to put the parking to the side and the rear.
I mean, nothing's ever impossible, so it's not the greatest language.
Well, some environmental, I don't know if, Outback was entirely a wetland or something. I don't think it's likely, but
Right, if the lot is narrow in the back and there's enough space.
yeah, I don't. But it doesn't really clarify on that either, so I'm not sure it's super. We also don't have a waiver process in here for standards, so I think the alternative to not having a waiver process and constantly being bombarded with waiver requests is to say things like to the greatest extent possible, because it gives you a little more flexibility. But either way, happy to do whatever there.
And you don't find the first and second sentences inconsistent at all? Because I'm not sure I'm reading it correctly. It just occurred to me it might be inconsistent.
I see what you're saying, yeah, because so you're
If the
saying.
greatest extent possible requires you to put some in the front, the second sentence
Says you can't
prohibits
do
it.
that, yeah,
Right, that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to get at.
yeah. I wonder if we just, do we need it's like you almost pick one sentence or the other. Like they're kind of two ways of saying the same thing, I think, right?
Yeah, you could just have the
Or
second sentence,
just have the second
probably.
sentence, you know?
Yeah, and then you don't have that wiggle room.
I would probably say, other than a driveway, all accessory parking lots, or no part of an accessory parking lot may be closer to the street.
In the building? No parking in front?
That's what the
In
standards
design-
imply.
Yeah, in the design review.
Just in downtown?
design
Right,
review.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, maybe that's the simpler.
That's the simple answer.
I think that
Let's
may be the
go.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
We're
Page 8?
Page 8, page 9.
9,
I
10.
got something on 9.
All right, I had something on 8.
Okay.
Let me just quickly get there. Yeah, so under D, if a building sits on a corner lot where both streets are public streets, the primary facade entrance may be oriented to the corner, or the building may have a primary entrance along each public street fronting facade. So couldn't it be,
Public fronting street facade?
yeah, well,
street
street
front-
fronting facade, first of all, is that language
Yeah.
correct? And why would it have to be each? Why couldn't it be one or the other? If it could be,
You
it
could have both, is what I
may
thought
have-
what it's
yeah.
saying.
says each. Or
But
does
it's-
each mean either one, or?
Well, I think it does in this context, in a slightly
You have a
convoluted
primary
way.
facade on two roads. I think it calls for a entrance on each side.
Yeah,
But I,
there could have been a corner, which would be one, so if not a corner, then it's both.
Or the
Right.
built
Really?
streets
Right.
May have.
So why does it have to be both streets?
Why?
I think it's a placemaking,
Yeah, it's saying you want entrances along
Yeah.
public streets. So
So
along
you have you build
along
a
your primary
corner
facades.
store, you build a corner store, right where Key Bank is, somebody builds a store right to the street wall on both. They would have to have entrances on both streets?
or the corner.
Well,
Or the corner, but
Sherman's
why-
is right at the
But if not the
corner.
corner, why both streets? Why not just whichever one they want?
Yeah.
I think it's a placemaking thing, and I mean, it's hard to
So,
capture.
but if we go to the definition of primary facade, it's an exterior facade of a building which contains a primary public entrance and is oriented towards a public street. A building can have more than one primary facade.
Maybe this requires more than one.
I think that's the question, is
That's
does
the
it?
point.
Yeah,
That's my point, yeah.
right, right.
I mean, why doesn't it say either or both? It does seem odd that every corner store has to have two entrances or facing the corner.
But I think, I mean, I don't know if I'm playing devil's advocate or not, but the counter, because I'm not sure exactly how, I don't think I feel terribly strongly about this, but to sort of take like a far-flung, maybe not that far-flung situation, you can imagine, so that same lot, Key Bank, you imagine somebody puts they want to designate is it Justin's Way? Is that Justin's Way?
Elm Street.
Elm Street, sorry. Elm Street. They want to designate the Elm Street as the primary facade, and then they build out the whole front of Main Street as like a street wall, but there's nowhere to get in. So it kind of feels like, as you're walking along Main Street, it feels like you're kind of closed off. It might feel, for example, like the wall at Ella Bean.
Yeah, correct. So I agree with you completely. If it's facing
Who would
Main
do that?
Street.
Yeah, who would do that?
If it's Main Street, you would think you definitely want doors there, but do they have to put one on Elm Street too?
I guess if each facade were like several hundred feet long, I don't know if there's any long, very long, right? I think the goal of placemaking is to feel like you're a part of the streetscape and the buildings aren't sort of like walled off. Like it's.
If you chose the corner, then you could have had huge walls on both streets, right? Because it only requires one if it's the corner.
Put one door in the
But-
corner,
but it-
make them.
Corner.
Yep. But then you have I'm sorry, I'm trying to play the role
I guess
of,
I'm
like-
saying the primary facade definition says a building can have more than one primary facade. It's not saying you have to have more than one.
Well, this one does say you have to have more than one. It says each.
Well,
It says each public street fronting facade, doesn't say each primary facade,
Right.
in which case you could say I only have one.
So how about one or both instead of each? That's all I'm
Yeah.
suggesting.
Yep,
Either or both.
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
sounds good to me.
The corner example is what.
It does
That's what does it
enable
for me.
the-
All right, if you can put it in the corner and not have one on either side, then fine. Then you can pick your one or the other. And hopefully nobody says, well, I
So
want
nobody
it at the
does it
far
LLB.
corner of one, and then you've got, 300 feet. I think, I mean, but it's a good example too of like where in Ella Bean's case, I actually think that's a pretty good change for them, even though it doesn't help the streetscape, but they're working with because the front door opened right into a bus stop and a sidewalk that was like this
Right.
wide. So it was
Right.
kind of, it just illustrates the difficulty of capturing every scenario.
Yep.
all right.
All right, moving
Sorry to
along.
play devil's advocate there. I was trying to kind of like
The coffee bar.
figure out what the intent of the consultants was.
Page 9.
Um,
On page 9.
Page 9.
Yep.
Well, first of all, in F, you say franchise, and I think that's not accurate. I think you have to say something like franchise or chain, or it can't just, chain stores are not franchises. Franchise is a specific thing. A company-owned store is not a franchise. So I just
yeah,
think
like
the
what
word
would-
choice is wrong.
What is the national?
National stores or national or regional stores. I mean, maybe it's that because.
Corporately
it-
branded stores.
Yeah, corporately, national or regional stores. I think that would, national or regional businesses.
Brand-specific design?
And then it would be brand-specific design is not allowed unless it adheres to the.
I would
because
also
any-
say, I would add the word building to that, because design might be too broad, but like brand-specific building design. In other words, I mean, it's the very thing that a couple meetings ago we talked about, like, you don't want to take the Taco Bell out of the Taco Bell pattern book, the structure, and plop it in Freeport, right?
Right.
That's what we're trying to avoid.
Right.
So,
But franchise does not describe Taco Bell
It might.
necessarily. It might,
Yeah.
only in half the cases.
All right,
yeah.
so change franchise to some other term, like national and regional store.
And change the second franchise to brand.
Brand-specific building design.
That
Okay.
solves it.
Yep.
Are we on 9?
yep.
Still on page 9, yep.
So I just have a quick question. There must be a break in the roof line to mitigate building mass. Is that a defined term, mitigate building mass? I'm not sure what that means exactly.
That one doesn't bother me because the break in the roof is the objective.
Right.
So it's just saying, you can't do this, you gotta do this other thing, and then it's like justifying it, but it could just as easily not justify it and just say you can't do this.
I hear Wayne's edit, mitigate mass is not, is that what you're really doing?
Well.
But anyway.
Yeah, it's an but I think it's like, it's a justification
Is there-
of the standard, or like, it's adding context to the standard, but the standard is still an objective.
Can we use a more layman-type language to substitute for mitigate building mass?
Break up the building facade,
Yeah,
visually break up.
For a visual impact to accomplish what?
Reduce the building mass.
reduce may be better, yeah.
Well, what do we
Yeah.
mean by the
Right,
perception of
I
the
think it's,
size?
I think it's like the imposing size of,
You even need that, why? Why not? That's probably the whole thing that's wrong. What if you just got rid of that?
I think it's helpful to have it in there. I mean,
If the horizontal roof line is more than 50 feet, there must be a break in the roof line,
yeah, that's why it doesn't bother me.
period. Who cares why?
So I've heard three different things: to leave it as is, to remove the last three words, or to clarify the last,
The last
three
four
words.
words.
Four words, okay.
I'll go with that.
I'd go along with just removing the last
Leaving the
words.
last,
Yeah,
so end on roof line.
right.
It's my second favorite, I won't say anymore.
So the discussion we just had with the corner lot where the key bank is, I mean, in section C, supposedly it would have fixed that. Expanses of more than 30 feet of horizontal width without windows, entrances are not permitted. So you can't, so of course we have,
Well, windows.
Well, yeah, windows.
But you could still have a mass of windows for 50 feet.
yeah, you could, but,
I mean, you could have 29 feet of brick wall, and then one window, and then another
yeah, I
25.
mean, but who's
I
going to
mean,
do
there's
that?
plenty of flexibility.
Who's going to do that besides Beans?
Yeah,
I mean, is it not permitted now? Did they do it without permit? I mean, up Justin's Way, there's like, must be 50 or 60 feet of wall there.
yeah, I
without a-
think that might be a
yeah.
touchy subject, actually, that section of wall. Yeah. I think it's suspect.
So, what's good for the goose is good for everybody, huh? So why is it in here?
Why is what
The 30 feet.
Well, if they got away with it, why are we punishing other people? I'm not picking on them. I mean, I don't care what they do, but,
Well,
I'm
the
saying,
goal
it's a little
here,
inconsistent.
I think the goal is still a worthy goal, in my opinion. So, I would,
Except we ought to apply it.
I certainly agree with that, but that's not
two
our.
wrongs don't make a right.
Well, I think that's part of the problem with the current ordinance is
this
the
language in the
board
current
doesn't.
ordinance?
No, the current ordinance is very subjective and open-ended. So an applicant presents something, and then, they present what they want to do, and the PRB, is put in the position of, okay, do we ask them to do more? Do we,
Right. Do
require
we-
that they do more? What are we basing it off of?
Do we
And
disapprove the
it's
whole
hard for them.
application because we don't like this one part?
Right.
Where it's like, if we say, you can't do this specific thing, then it's easy for them to just say, well, okay, we're not gonna do that thing.
It's much easier with for all the work we put into this and how long it's taken, it's clearly going to achieve like an easier, cleaner process for board and applicants than what we currently have.
And actually, in Bean's defense, they did put another element on there in the form of that trellis. So that could theoretically qualify,
Yeah.
Right. All right, I don't want to spend any more
It
time.
would have made that whole
We go on.
discussion much easier at
Yes.
the PRB.
Yep.
That's for
That's a great.
I wasn't
place
here
to
for
leave
it,
that
but
one.
it
Leave that one
went
behind.
several meetings.
All right, I think we're 9, 10, 11.
On 10, just one quick thing. On 10, it's section 3, material C, is metal siding allowed or not?
Metal siding.
So it says concrete block, precast concrete, plastic are not permitted. And up above, it talks about all the things that you do like, but no place does it mention metal siding. And I want to know, is it on the in list or the out list? I believe it should be on the out list.
Yeah, I don't think it's intended to be allowed.
Well, then why not be specific?
It's not mentioned, is it?
It's not permitted, it's prohibited.
Yeah.
Oh,
You don't need to include it.
okay. Well, I mean, you have C that specifically calls out what isn't allowed.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so you could,
You can go either
you
way.
can go along.
Yeah, we can just
I made
have
my
B
point.
as what's allowed and then delete C, or we can make C more specific. Either way is fine.
On D, you know, there's the use of the word encouraged. You know, it's just, I wonder if we could get rid of that.
Where's that?
D,
down.
10, page
Four.
10, 4D.
Oh, 4D, okay.
Last sentence. On flat roofs, parapets are encouraged to help conceal rooftop mechanical units.
Why not say how concealed do they have to be?
Yeah, I mean, I
who's your
see,
neighbor?
If that's fine, that's fine, but I'm just called it out. It's kind of a, it's a word that, you know.
I saw it as well in,
I think it's saying that parapets aren't necessarily the only way that you could screen those, but I guess they're the encouraged form, but yeah.
I think-
it
Yeah.
says up above, shall be screened.
Yeah.
So maybe that last sentence is irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean,
so the reason, I think we talked about this last meeting briefly. The reason I am in favor of these sort of little suggestions.
Advice.
Yeah, it's advice, because I think in the context of a larger decision about if a project is approved or not, like, we've talked at length over many years even, about the fact that there is always going to be some subjectivity, and the subjectivity isn't necessarily the worst thing, right? There's advantages to having subjectivity and having a board that can be responsive to what the community wants to see. I think these sort of things give little, like, touch points for the board to say, okay, they have a parapet, maybe if this other thing isn't perfect in the, like, perfectly sticking with the, you know, so you can kind of do, and we don't have a formal point system, which I think is actually something that some towns do use, of saying, like, all right, you get a point for the parapet, and you get a point for your true divided lights, and you get 3 points for, whatever. But we don't have that, but I think it's kind of natural for board members, probably as they're going through an application, to kind of be keeping some sort of rough score of saying, like, yeah, this checks a lot of these boxes. And so I
All right, I
sort of
just
like
wanted to
the-
flag it.
There's a couple places where encouraged is still existing.
yeah, I think, right, there's two different ways to use it, which are highlighted here. There's the way where encouraged is the only thing mentioned, which is a problem, because then it's, are we asking them to do it or not? Here, it's a little different, because you are giving an objective standard. You're saying the equipment has to be screened from view. And then to Sam's
Then you're
point, you're
recommending-
giving a recommendation of a good way that it could be done, but it's not the only way. So that encouraged language, yeah, it's problematic, but it's a little less problematic in this case than it would be if it was the only thing mentioned.
Could you go back to page 9, please, and look at the very top, B? Entrances shall relate to the overall design concept and style, scale, materials, and detailing. The use of columns, porches, and porticos are encouraged. And I wondered, does that mean yes or no? I mean, and maybe it's nice that we're giving advice, but it really has no teeth, which I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm.
But I think-
less
I mean-
teeth, So.
I think that's the, you know, and the annotated photo would show, hopefully, some version of this that says, like, these are the sorts of things we're going for. I think it just, I think it helps a developer or
Okay.
a building owner to say, all right, this is what, you know, if my property's in this area, these are the sorts of things that I should be.
Yeah, I mean, the way this would happen in like a real application, right, is, so there's a standard that the entrance has to relate to the overall design concept. If you just left it at that, it's kind of vague. It gives you some examples of things you can do to meet it. So if an applicant proposes one of those things, it's easy for staff and the board to say, okay, great, they did one of the things proposed. But if an applicant wants to come forward and propose something else, they can do that and say, well, we don't want to do any of these things you listed, but we think this other thing that we came up with accomplishes the overall point. And now you can
It's up to
have that
PRB.
more of a subjective conversation.
Right, and the board can still, I mean, like, when the board makes a finding on a project or issues a design certificate, there's a pretty robust documentation that says, like, we find that it's consistent with this for this reason. We find that it's consistent with this for this reason. And this is like, this could give a touch point for that document too, to create that justification for the decision, so.
Yeah, I would have more problem with it if the first part was all it said, and it said, you're encouraged, entrances shall relate to, or, instead of saying entrances shall, it says, entrances are encouraged to relate to the overall design concept, and then left it at that. That would be, like, really problematic in my eyes.
Okay, so I don't hear, I guess, strong objection to the current wording. Is everybody kind of feeling okay about this? Okay. We
I still
did
feel
not.
like after we're done with this, it's going to go to PRB, and PRB's
they're gonna weigh
voice
in
is
on-
important.
Well, so next steps, we send it to the consultant. We're going to get back a draft. I'll put in these touches. We'll have the graphics and the map. I'll bring it back to planning board next, but however we do it, I would specifically invite PRB to that meeting and share the whole document with them.
Yep.
Or we do a joint workshop, or like whatever it is,
I
we would
think
all.
something like that is that's what I've talked to Ford about too, is like, I think that's what he wants the PRB to have a chance to weigh in.
I
but
think they
it's-
have to.
Yeah.
And then, so some of this stuff, we can just leave it there and then see where it goes.
Yep.
We did kind of leave a little bit open-ended up above on materials about whether we should just delete item or sub-item C, concrete block, precast, like basically whether it should be, if it's not permitted, it's prohibited, if we should take that approach, or list out the, because I think there's kind of two ways to go in my eyes. One, you just delete C, or two, you make B a little bit softer, traditional materials.
Such a,
But, and maybe one way to do it is to say, traditional materials shall be used, and then let somebody argue why their material is traditional. If they really feel that,
Yeah.
like, Core 10 steel siding is traditional, then sure, make your case, to the PRB. Does that make sense? It's kind of like a way to incorporate the. So traditional material shall be used, and then does that leave open, this is a question, a real question. Does that leave open the space to have materials that are specifically permitted? I think it does, right? To say, like, we don't want to specifically, I think I misspoke, to leave sub-item C in there and say, traditional materials shall be used, such as these things. If you want to argue the case for something like metal, fine, have at it, but don't try to argue the case for concrete block, precast concrete, and plastic, because we don't permit those. Is that like a reasonable framework for how this
I
is working?
wouldn't, I would permit
would you add
precast
in?
concrete so much sooner than metal.
Yeah, would you add metal to C, but
mean,
still
I
keep that
just-
same logic, or leave metal out?
Personally, I would leave metal out just because it's such a huge, I'd probably honestly leave precast concrete out too, but metal is such a huge, I mean, then can you not use like aluminum, any sort of aluminum profile or aluminum siding on your building? Or what if somebody has?
No, I don't think that, I mean, that's a good question,
Yeah,
but,
yeah,
I mean, that's a good question to ask the PRB too, very much, like, but
I mean, it's like,
I don't know what other
Policy,
people
yeah.
think about that. Precast concrete doesn't offend me, but metal siding.
Metal could look like anything. I mean, metal could look like wood even,
yeah, or like, I mean, there's,
Going to come up in our 527 conversation too.
Yeah,
Because
I
there's a
mean-
very specific metal siding standard even there. so.
Right.
yeah, right, there's a big difference between corrugated metal, like with a galvanized finish, or like, there's been a trend, I worked on a house quite a while ago now, but that had Core 10 steel siding on parts of it, which was sort of a trend that designed, and maybe it's not the whole building, maybe it's like a accent panel on one
Right.
side of it, and it's like, are we prohibiting that? I don't know.
Very expensive.
Can you flag that for discussion if we have a bigger I mean, the architects on the PRB and the tastemakers over there,
I would say metal's too broad a thing to prohibit.
I hear
Yeah.
you, I hear you.
I mean, we could corrugated,
But,
you could say corrugated metal.
Well, but aluminum siding is a question right there.
Yeah, it's not super
I
common
don't think
anymore, but
anybody wants
still.
aluminum siding at this point, but
Yeah.
It's flagged. We can,
Alright,
yeah, talk about it when we reconvene with
Okay.
the whole groups.
All right, I think we're to 11.
Section 7.
Yep, section 7, design standards for new commercial mixed use and multifamily.
I have one dumb thing on 11. I don't, maybe it's dumb. The very first one, A, main building entrances must include 3 or more. And I think the intent's totally right here. I just noticed that you could do overhanging roof lines, cornices, and parapets, and all you've done is up in the roof. You know what I mean? It's like
What if you just lump cornice and/or parapet together, that kind of thing?
I mean, maybe that would do it, but I realized you could,
You could go to the like list format of having a semicolon sub. Like multifaceted display windows,
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
semicolon, transom windows and side lights, semicolon, recesses or projections, semicolon, overhanging roof lines, semicolon, cornices, parapets,
yeah.
cornices or parapets, semicolon, or some, you know what I mean, some way to do that.
Is a multifaceted display window, what's like a multi-light display window, or?
I hope that's one that I think the graphic hopefully would help with. I think what it means is like a bay window. That's what I have in mind. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's where I'm hoping the graphic. The graphic would say this is a multifaceted display window.
Does that hang out over the sidewalk?
Yeah, it's I can't remember which building it is that has.
Well, no part of the building would be able to go beyond the property line, and it would have to meet setbacks.
It's
So,
the one that has Fall Raven in it that has those big. No, it's
Yeah,
the next
yeah, it's a polo building.
Yeah,
Polo
and the
building.
Under Armour, maybe, isn't
No,
that,
Under
they
Armour
have these
doesn't,
big
no.
boxes that stick out.
That's polo, that's a polo building.
Yeah, I can't remember which building it is.
And I think the Met's got some kind of step-out
That
window.
has-
so I'm not sure exactly where all those property lines are, but, so this is for new construction, so I'll say any new building going up, no part of the building would be able to extend over the property line. And would-
A multifaceted window might extend, either the foundation has got a step in it, or it's like a bay window where it's, installed in the wall plane, but the window juts out beyond the
Yeah, I
primary
understand, but
facade.
I'm just wondering if, when it said multifaceted, you know,
What does it mean?
Yeah.
what does that mean?
No, that's a good question. That was how I took it.
Okay. I can,
I guess maybe the flag there is just make sure the annotation is clear.
I don't know.
Is Mallet Drive, is Mallet 2 Ts? I thought it was 2 Ts. Maybe it's not.
I don't know.
Okay,
I'll check.
Good question.
thank you, Kyle.
I have very few comments here until page 16. Does anyone? Planting stuff I felt like was a little bit out of my element.
I mean, we talked about that when we went through, and we took some of that seriously.
You don't live in this district.
Yeah, I had no comments till 16, so I don't know if anybody's got anything before then, but.
Yeah, I mean, Andrea, these specific standards only apply to new commercial mixed-use and multifamily buildings. So like, I don't have to deal with a lot of this stuff, like the plant-specific stuff. And, actually, today, technically, I would have to, right? Or how's it, like, as part of the Freeport Village Overlay District? If I trigger that, there's some sort of, like, plant list and stuff anyway.
Oh,
So,
yes,
yeah, we're
there is a
trying to
plant list.
simplify it for
Yep.
single-family and duplex homeowners, so.
Yeah, the way the village overlay is laid out is weird, though. It's, if you're a single family, not everything in there applies to you,
Right.
so.
Yeah, it's confusing. That's a discussion. I had just a wordsmithing thing on section 8 on page 16. Subsection B just uses like a different tone, and I think it could be made more consistent with the rest of it by replacing, if you are replacing, swapping that out for when replacing missing architectural features. And then kind of similar down below,
Where are we? Sorry.
page
16B.
16, and then, so it's section 8.1.b.
Is it section 16 for you? It's page 18 for me. Okay.
Yeah, I guess
Okay.
that's a reason to use the sections, yeah.
81B. right?
8.1b. So it says, I would change it to when replacing missing architectural features.
Okay.
And then further down, saying, rather than replace them with features appropriate to the style, say replacements must use features appropriate to the style of the building.
What did you say?
Yeah, I didn't hear you either.
That,
Sorry.
so the 8.1b would read, when replacing missing architectural features such as previously, if historic, and I'm skipping a line, if historic photos or physical evidence cannot be found, replacements must use features appropriate to the style of the building, rather than
I
replace
see
them.
it's syntax here.
Yeah, it's just a consistency thing. I bring it up because it's like slightly above typo level, but. I had also on page 16, the very last, so now we're at section 8.2C. Design of new storefront entrances must match the original historic storefront. And then it says details may be simplified if exact details and profiles are undocumented. Wondering like what approval level is necessary there. And in a situation where there might be documentation or there might be a photo that seems to show like a really complicated profile that's no longer available, it can be cost prohibitive to.
This was the one comment I had here. It's the must match.
Yeah.
And maybe if it said must match to the, I mean, it's the same thing we talked about earlier, that you may be requiring something that's not reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, I could just see like situation, if you go try to get like a particular profile milled up and you're building a storefront and you need 16 lineal feet of it, it's gonna cost you like $1,000 for that 16 lineal feet of historic molding.
In the line right above, you use the word as long as the design intent, and I wonder if you use that same thing here, must match the design intent of the original historic structure, whether that would,
Yeah, it could say details may be simplified as long, if exact details and profiles are well, no, that's the part that's gotta go.
or
So details may be
undocumented or unavailable.
Yeah, if exact details and profiles are undocumented, materials are unavailable as long as the design intent.
Yeah, something about, there should be some softening there.
Yeah, a little bit of flexibility. I think probably have the idea on that one.
Okay.
Anyone else on this section?
I don't think I have anything else in the document. I don't.
I flagged the outright prohibition on cable rail as being offending my personal sensibility. I think cable rail looks great almost no matter where you use it, but
Where was that?
that's,
I noticed that too, but I didn't.
I think that was one of the changes that we added from after the last conversation. So I don't know if we got that comment
Why was it prohibited?
wrong. But I know we talked about that as we were going through the standards last time. So if that was a recent change. So if the board wants that to say something different, we can go back and change it.
I agree with Sam, I like it.
Yeah. It's one of those, like, I see the intent. and
So
I
this
don't
wasn't
dis-
contributing buildings, so I think that's why it landed on it, but yeah.
Oh, it's only in contributing buildings?
Yeah, section 8's only contributing.
Because it's not traditional enough.
Yeah.
It makes me, it makes me wish that, because I got a design review permit to reconstruct my front step, that included a cable rail, but I didn't do it, and that's for pandemic-related reasons, I got sidetracked, and then, so
They
now
let
that-
you do
so
it
basically,
back
like,
then.
that's gonna, I would have been allowed to do it, now that's gonna
Based on their
expire, and now
sub-
if this is enacted, I won't be able to put in my cable rail.
What section was that?
Run down and get a permit, Vaughn. Run down and redo your permit.
I know?
Can we do a full audit of Sam's house?
Yeah. No, oh my gosh, no. No. There's so, yeah.
Do we want to revisit the cable rail, like flag it for discussion with the PRB, that?
Yeah, it's kind of an aesthetic choice. It's not a hill I want to die on necessarily, but I just wonder if it's a little too restrictive on an exterior feature where a little more flexibility might be beneficial.
Where, what was it, section?
83C. I had a,
We're gonna take that out, or what are we doing?
I flagged it for discussion when we come back with the PRB and the PB. If people want to weigh in more, then for some more opinions.
Take it out, I don't care.
I'm fine taking it out if the board wants to take it out now, too.
does anyone have stuff?
Pretty ambivalent about it.
Yeah. Maybe it's a situation where we do kind of what we did above, where with materials, where you say traditional, or like a traditional look shall be, and if I want to argue that my cable rail is somehow traditional, that might be a tough argument. But if it's like, there might be some flexibility, maybe we make the standard that type of thing, where there's a little more flexibility. I have a comment on Windows, which is, are we still in 8? I think so.
Yeah,
8,
6.
5.
What page?
20B, 26B, 26.
It's page 20 for us, yeah. So it's,
Page 20.
yep, so it's
number
6,
six.
and then, right, so it's 6A. Historic wood window sashes and surrounds should be retained and repaired. The historic fabric whenever possible. I think it's a great goal. Having just done the last one in my house.
Bravo.
Not the last one we're going to do. I'm glad we did it. I don't regret it, but it's really expensive. And it's way more, I would rather see somebody feel like they can put in a replacement window that meets the standards of the ordinance, rather than saying, well, I guess I can't do anything. And so I have to live with this old window that doesn't function very well.
Yeah, no,
So, and I know it says whenever possible there, which leaves open the possibility, I guess, of some, but I wonder if we need to soften that a little bit.
So
or
I
even-
would
or even-
agree we'd soften that. I mean, you've got to be able to go down and get a window and put it in,
Yeah, yeah, as much as I love.
Got to be reasonable.
So
Yeah.
Sam, you took out your wooden windows and put in replacements, is that what you're
I
saying?
have done that on a couple of windows that are on a non-primary facade, but we restored all the ones that are on the, I guess not primary facade in the technical sense of it,
Yeah,
but like the,
Visual ones.
yeah, the ones
Ones you
that-
see from the street.
yeah, and the ones that matter to us the most on the interior too. So we've done like,
You can never really repair, I mean, I live in a house that's from 1840, and I didn't want to replace the windows. I was the one who kept telling my wife, but there's wavy glass in many of the panes.
yeah.
And then we finally broke down and got new Pella windows with true divided lights, and the house is so much better.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and it's like, and
Hate
it's,
to be told I couldn't.
it's more expensive, and we haven't even done the storms yet. So basically, it's like, it's a high barrier, and I think that, I almost wonder if we just want to delete it. I mean, I hate to delete the nod to it, because the preservationist in me, which is not a huge part of me, but it's a great goal, but not everybody should be made to go for that. So I wouldn't, I'd be a little sorry to see it go, but I think it might be worth it in the grander scheme.
I mean, a lot of historic preservation ordinances and standards, you'll find more of the encouraged language in there because you do want to recommend it as a best practice, but leave room that it's not. So, I mean, if we want to leave it in, but reword it to not necessarily be a hard requirement but still leave it in as a goal to, to recommend people.
Which I guess it is in there in a way as a goal. It says should, and it
Yeah,
does
the
say
word- I was gonna
wherever
say the-
possible. Yeah, but maybe it's as simple as defining what wherever
Well,
possible.
whenever possible is different than is encouraged.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So maybe it's just like,
Here it just says should everywhere, right?
yeah, it could just,
What does should mean?
or restoration of historic wood window sashes and surrounds
Is
is
encouraged.
encouraged to preserve the historic fabric.
And note that right up above it in the preface here, it says when new windows are necessary. So it's almost like this whole thing is talking about new windows.
Well, I like that sentence where it says, when new windows are necessary, they should maintain. And I think necessary could be interpreted as like, this is necessary because our windows are failing and we don't want to spend 3 times,
The heat,
yeah. So, yep.
All right.
I'm still not clear what should means. The should means you could require it?
I think I would switch it to encouraged.
Yeah.
I would say, his, which should, sorry, in
there's
the
a-
top line or the
I'm
under
looking
A?
at 6 ABC. I mean, should is everywhere throughout there.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it in,
I think should is a requirement. I think that's what the language means.
Because usually you'd say must or
Shall.
are required to or shall, right? Should is,
It's usually shall or may.
Shall, yeah,
Yeah.
shall, that's right.
Shall is one, may is the other.
yeah, I would, if that's the intent, I would replace should with shall.
yeah, I'd be okay with that. But I do think that I would feel better if A were reworded to be encouraged rather than should or shall.
Shall be encouraged.
Yes.
Must be,
Or it should.
Go through the whole document and put shall be encouraged through the whole.
Are we done with this item?
Yeah.
All right, I think that was my last comment.
I have a question on 24.
Can you give me a section number? Because I'm
Yeah.
in the online view and it's different.
Yeah, I'm looking at section 11, 5 and 6. So it's just the penalty section, and it kind of describes your liability for a penalty between $100 and $1,000 in number 6. But then in number 7, it clarifies that that's every day. So it's kind of,
Yeah, this is taken directly from our current ordinance. I'm not sure if it's also the same as our site plan language.
well, you might want to unify it, but for this purpose, it just seems a little misleading. Like number 6 alone looks pretty misleading until you read number 7. And
So I'll say that, I mean, we can talk about changes that should be made, and then we can run it by higher-ups and to actually deal with the enforcement codes
Yeah.
and how that should, because planning will not be involved in that stage of it. But especially with design review, we find things that have been done all the time that we have to look at after the fact, because people do little things and they don't recognize, or they know what they're supposed to do, but they just decided not to do it, and then we see it and we bring it up. So this is when any violation shall be found to exist. So that's getting an actual notice of violation. We find things all the time that people did that should have gotten a permit or reviewed and approved, but we don't issue notice of violations. You know, we'll just do an after-the-fact approval, and this won't apply at all. I don't know here, but I know in other places, you know, even if a notice of violation goes out, there could be, you know, some sort of, you know, consent agreement that the issue be dealt with, and, you know, there's no fine tallying up every day. It's, you resolve the conditions of the agreement, and, it's fine.
Right. So it may not be likely to happen, but it's just, if you say shall be punished by a fine of not more than $1,000, that's a little bit misleading until you get to number 7. It could be $1 million, So.
I mean, if it's per day, then why not say $1,000 per
That's what I'm saying,
day?
combine it in one
Okay.
paragraph.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the need to put some teeth into this, where, there has to be some disincentive for ignoring the provisions here.
Right, and I'm not even talking about the substantive policy, which we could debate if we want to.
Yeah.
But,
I don't think we need to debate it today, because it does mirror stuff that's like all across
Right.
many ordinances. But one, just anecdotally, it's pretty terrifying, I think, to get a notice of violation. I don't have a notice of violation, or I've never had a notice of violation in Freeport.
Not yet.
Not yet, right, not, yeah, once the board does the site walk at my house, whoever gets the most millions of dollars that are could be levied against me, wins. But yeah, anecdotally, to get a notice of violation, which, I mean, it's public, my parents had one on their house in Freeport a couple years ago. It has since been resolved by a consent agreement. It was nothing they did, but it was stuff that was uncovered when they applied for a building permit, and it was like going back decades of like poor documentation, stuff that was done that may or may not have been permitted. Anyway, when they realized that they could be at least theoretically liable for like
a daily amount.
25 years or 30 years every day for $1,000 a day, for, they were like,
$300,000 a year.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
three-
700 and whatever $1,000 every 2 years.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's kind of, even if it's not really going to happen, just the thought that
Yeah.
theoretically somebody could come after you for like, tens of millions of dollars
Right.
is not a great thing to put on your citizens. So I think there may be a time to rework that.
So there's two issues. One is just the way it's presented, and the other is whether there should be a limit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if Kyle is, making these other deals, it really doesn't say he can in here. Does it? If he's doing consent decrees.
It doesn't allow for a
It doesn't
consent
allow it.
decree.
Right, the
It's not-
shall.
Maybe, what it
says
may,
shall.
yeah, it doesn't say maybe subject to.
Yeah. So, it really doesn't allow for Kyle or anybody or the code guy to cut a deal with somebody.
Right.
So it doesn't mention consent decrees, just says, hey, you're in violation, you get a fine.
And I think that language, I mean, that's not the way the town has dealt with it in practice, at least
I
in my
know, but-
understanding, is that.
Well, but
That's
then the
today.
language shouldn't say it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's
I'll
like,
compare it to what we have in other
Today.
sections, see if it's the
Yeah.
same or different. I'll talk to codes.
Maybe the extreme part is each day. Maybe there should be some other way of calculating a fine other than daily.
Maybe this is a good time to change it all the way across the board.
I think it would
I
be
can look into it.
great. I don't want to just get into it anymore tonight, but I do think it is a good.
Yeah, I can say I did not look at this section in
Yeah,
depth
yeah,
when
yeah.
I just
I think
copied
it's
it
just,
over.
it's boilerplate, yeah, it's fine, it's
All right.
understandable why it's there, so.
Okay.
All right.
Is that
it's not
everything?
Not exactly early, but, yeah, I think, I'm assuming everybody's ready to move on to item 4, which is a discussion of commercial district performance standards. So, how do you want to take this, Kyle? Do you want to, because I think that was an important discussion, I think we got a lot done.
I feel really good that
Yeah.
we have actually pushed that ball down.
Design review?
Yeah, design review.
I think there's been a lot of progress,
It's
so-
been a big issue, and it's finally feels like it's getting done.
No, Carol and I have talked about it. We've, along the way, it's been hard to tell if progress was being made, but when I accepted all the track changes from our last conversation and the stuff that staff had put in, I felt a lot better with it, so I was happy to hear that the board also seemed to feel better about it as well. We can add these things in, and then we get the last, graphics, map, and everything updated. Yep. As far as I'm not sure, it's 8:30, what the board is thinking, I don't know how many comments people had on the commercial district things. I don't know what time we're necessarily looking at trying to end. I would say out of our next two items, the presentation on the state changes is a shorter item because that's more just informational. So if we were looking at wanting to do, one thing and get out at 9, we could do that and table the commercial conversation. It's not really pertinent, like we talked about, we're going to come back to the January workshop to talk about the build-out analysis stuff and then come back in February probably with more C1, C3 conversations, so we can talk about it then too. But I'm happy to do it now as well.
I'm fine to table commercial district unless either other folks feel strongly in a different direction or there's like some project that is.
Yeah. We would be wrapping these changes up into the C1, C3 changes, so it's not
It's not
like.
going to happen now anyway.
Yeah, I wasn't looking to, come back with a draft on this, then come back with a draft.
And if
on-
it gets urgent at some later date, maybe we can,
Yep.
I don't know, we'll squeeze in another.
I'm also down with tabling it I had a bunch of little comments on this. Mostly you seem like you were going in the right direction, but a lot of it had to do with stuff that I think is going to be informed by the meeting on the 14th. Because I keep trying to figure out, what does the street wall look like? Is there sidewalks? What's the overall plan that this has to abide by?
Yeah.
Do I hear a motion to table item number 4?
Motion to table item number 4.
Second.
And a second from Bonnie. All in favor? Great. Item number 5 is a discussion on recent state laws pertaining to zoning.
All right. So, a little while ago now, LD 1829 was adopted, which is a follow-up legislation to LD 2003 to encourage more housing development in the state, essentially. The Housing Opportunity Program within the Office of Community Affairs is undergoing the rulemaking process right now. But in addition to LD 1829, there's a couple other smaller scale LDs that were put in there as well. So the rulemaking is not just for LD 1829, it adds in a couple of these other changes. So the things that this rulemaking is really looking at are, and how it's going to impact municipalities, is it's going to require changes to minimum lot sizes and lot area per dwelling requirements. We touched on this before, the max building height for affordable housing developments, less review and kind of a change of use definitions for 3 and 4 unit structures, and off-street parking for residential uses. And so we'll specifically touch on each one of these. So probably the biggest change is this lot size and density requirement. So basically, the rulemaking breaks it down into a few different areas. So if you are in a growth area, so these are all the growth areas, rural areas that we identified in the comp plan. So our growth area is, primarily our village districts, VC1, VC2, V1, VMU1, 2, our commercial 1 and commercial 3. So your minimum lot size cannot exceed 5,000 square feet. And then you get into density. So on that 5,000 square foot lot, the first 4 units, you can't have a lot area per dwelling greater than 1,250. And beyond those 4 units, you can't have a lot area per dwelling of 5,000 square feet. And the intent there is that you're required to allow a 5,000 square foot lot, and then you could do a 4 unit structure on that lot. So 4 times 1,250 gives you your 5,000. Then you move to outside of a growth area, but you're still on public water and sewer. So if you have any situations like
I have a
this.
question for,
Yeah,
so, okay, so the first 4 units, you can put 4 units on 5,000 square feet for the first 4 units.
yep.
So what about the second 4 units?
Then you would need 20,000 square feet. So the municipality can just make it 1250 across the board for,
I was going to say, if all I need to do is, if the minimum lot size is now 5,000 square feet, I just divide my lot.
oh, sure, yeah.
And I can put 4 units on each one.
Yeah, but what it's saying is that a 3-unit and a 4-unit, so we'll get to kind of the permitting and review for 3 and 4 units, what they're requiring going forward. But this is all kind of, the intent behind it is, you have these traditional single-family neighborhoods. In a traditional single-family neighborhood, a single-family, a duplex, a triplex, and a quadplex should all be treated the same way. So if you can have a single family on a 5,000 square foot lot, you should be able to have a 3 or 4 unit on that single family lot. But you shouldn't necessarily be able to have a 50 unit, 4-story apartment building.
Yeah.
So a municipality could just say the minimum lot area per dwelling is 1250, just, that's it.
In the growth area.
Yeah, beyond the first 4 units. If you have certain districts where you want that to be the case, that's fine. But, let's say a municipality has a zone and they're going to be lowering their density requirements. They don't want big multifamily apartment buildings on some like smaller residential streets. They might do what the state is saying here, where you have that 1250 standard for the first 4 units, but then you bump it up for additional units because you're okay with a bunch of quadplexes, but you don't want that one giant apartment building on a small kind of side street in your
So when they
growth
say 4 units, that's a quad, that's one building with 4 units in it.
area. It could be 4 single-family homes or 2 duplexes, but
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
it's a.
Yeah, it could be any combination
Yeah,
of.
it's
4 units.
attached or detached.
And it's, the state is setting sort of like a minimum
Yep.
baseline, so we could say, it's 1,250 square feet for the first 4 units and infinity after that. You say no lot can have more, I mean, not that we would do that, but like that it would be an option, right? To say no lot can have more than
Yeah,
4 units.
yeah,
You
so,
can't say, but you cannot prohibit under this, in a growth area, we could not prohibit, 4 units going on to a small.
right, so if you just didn't want to allow, so this will basically create a situation where right now we have single-family, duplex, and multifamily is 3 or more units. This will create a situation where you're going to have more uses. You're going to have single, duplex, triplex, quadplex, and then multifamily will be 5 or more units. So,
So if he's got a 20,000 square foot lot, he gets 4 units on the first 5,000, and the rest of them are single family, right?
3 more units.
He's got 3 more singles.
Yeah, yeah. But so, like what Sam was saying is, a community could say in a particular zone, we don't, we'll allow triplexes and quadplexes as an allowed land use, but we're not going to allow multifamily. So we're not going to allow, more than 4 units on a lot.
It seems to not be consistent, that's all.
I mean, what if a neighborhood said, we really don't like the way this is going. We think that, sure, fine, minimum lot size is now 5,000 square feet, but also minimum road frontage is 300 square feet.
That's just what I was thinking.
I mean, this is what I thought when
How
LD
can we-
2003
Yeah, I
came
mean,
up, is there's a
there's
million
always a
ways to
workaround.
get around it if
Yeah.
a community really didn't want
Well,
to.
can I go on record as saying that we should be getting around it? This is an incredible overreach by the state. I mean, I live in a neighborhood where we have a minimum 1.5 acre lot size. Are you saying that I can put, 15 houses, my next door neighbor could tear down their
Well,
house?
you're not growth.
Yeah, you're not in growth area if you're.
I'm served by water and sewer.
Okay, so you're in the second tier.
Yeah.
And so you're saying my 70,000 square foot lot could be divided into 8 lots? And obviously it can't because the road frontage isn't there, but I'm thinking about how do you protect my neighborhood? I do not want a quadplex next door to me. It's outrageous.
This is I think a really interesting conversation, and actually one I was going to bring up if you did, because so one thing that sorry, Kyle, I don't want to.
Sewer and water?
No, that's fine. I mean,
Public sewer and water,
Do you?
yes.
Oh, that's right.
I think, I mean, it raises
Till
a-
the private road, 2 houses past me.
That's right, because they had so much trouble down there, didn't they?
Yep.
They put in sewer.
I think it raises
forgot
right,
that.
a conversation about, right, like, so the growth area stuff.
The growth
you know,
area
makes
is
sense.
okay, that seems
But
okay.
there's these other standards. So the bottom point here, right, is if you're outside a growth area and no public utilities, you know, we can keep doing what we're doing. Like in our RR1, where the minimum
You can
lot
have
size is
RR1.
2.5 acres,
Right.
you know, it stays that way. If you're in a growth area and, you know, there's no public water and sewer, then you just meet the state minimum lot size for the necessary land if you have septic. You know, but if you're in a growth area, having a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet, pretty
It
reasonable.
doesn't seem crazy. right?
But yeah, this one is interesting. This is the one that can most lead to like almost more of a sprawl type development because you're encroaching on areas that aren't in your growth area, but you're saying that you must reduce the minimum lot size maybe fairly substantially.
Unless there's restrictive covenants, which is common.
Yeah, that could be, yeah.
You mean in any private street?
Right, but don't you have that on your
Often,
street?
if it's a subdivision, often there's covenants within the
So I
approved
don't
subdivision plan that would say,
Yeah, I mean, that's always a conversation. This won't have any, you know, some.
State law can't touch that.
Right, exactly, yeah. But then there's the second bullet point, you know, no more than 5,000 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit for the first 2 units. So, you know, if you have in these zones or where this applies, you're not in a growth area with water and, public water and sewer. You know, if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, you could do a duplex. But beyond that, chances are multifamily isn't allowed in these zones because you're outside a growth area. And most areas outside of growth area wouldn't allow multifamily housing.
aren't most lots already, you could basically find a way to do a duplex under LD 2000.
Yeah, I thought
whatever
that-
it was. Yeah, 3. It's just that this
I
is.
thought we
this allows
basically have
more
3
lots to be
family
more
zoning
smaller
everywhere.
lots. Yeah, but this allows for smaller lots.
But it didn't change the lot area requirements.
Right,
This
so you
does.
could do like a duplex on your 2.5 acre lot, but this is saying, no, your 2.5 acre lot can now be divided into 5 lots, each of which can have a duplex.
Yeah.
If we
Don't
just,
figure out a way to.
if
I
we
mean,
just
I
put
also
it
wonder
in
about, like, what
neighborhoods.
about public utilities being extended into growth areas? And, you know, it just progressively,
You mean into
know,
more rural areas?
yeah, and progressively spreading out into more, I
Yeah,
don't know.
it kind of does, there's at least the potential for it working against some of the goals that we identified in the comp plan of saying, let's put the growth here,
Here,
not here.
Well, I think we should maintain our, you know, our goals.
Yeah, oh, 100%.
So, yeah, I think it won't apply to too many places, but, yeah, maybe when we come to actually drafting language, you know, that's something we should keep in mind and look at what other, you know, standards are relevant then.
When you say covenants, that would be in subdivision, so I'm in the subdivision.
If it's in your deed, just look at your deed.
Yeah,
Yeah, so a lot of.
but all of South Freeport Road wouldn't be.
Right,
You could do that to all of South Freeport Road, couldn't have covenants.
theoretically, maybe, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say.
You might not have a covenant because that's an old subdivision.
It's from 1980 something, yeah.
No, it's before that,
Yeah.
60s, at least.
Yeah, but some subdivisions will
Some
say,
subdivisions,
you know, a
none-
lot can
none
only
of the
be used for a
houses are that.
single-family home,
Oh,
or,
yeah.
So mine says.
yep.
On my street, no.
Well, in Desert, you're in, down off Staples Point Road, right?
No, I'm off of Pine Street.
Oh, Pine Street, okay. I thought you were down at Spark Cove.
No, Spark Cove is a different thing.
Oh, okay.
All right, so we'll flag it and, you know, come back to more about what that means when we actually get into needing to come up with language to amend it. But yeah, I agree that that specific subsection is probably the most concerning. So I wanted to pull up just some existing examples of our standards in our growth areas now, just to show, remember the standard is going to be minimum lot size of 5,000, no more than 1,250 for the first 4 units. So right now, some of our zoning districts are split up between if you're creating a lot out of subdivision versus if you're in subdivision, which is a conversation for another day if we want to change some of that, just because it's more complex than it needs to be probably in some of our village zones. But you can see, even in our village commercial 1, like right here, our minimum lot area is 8,000 square feet. We're going to have to lower that to 5,000. Our land per dwelling already meets it because we're 0 here. But the VC2 and the Village 1 have the same standards out of subdivision. We're going to have to lower both of those. And then you can see, in subdivisions, we do the net residential acreage calculation where we say, you can have, for single family subdivisions, you can have 1 dwelling unit per 12,000 square feet of net residential acreage. So like those numbers are going to have to be reduced fairly significantly. I mean, even going down to 5,000 square feet is, it won't be a difference for the duplex and multifamily conversation, but the 1,250 for the first 4 units will be an increase in density there. And then, when we're already working on these, right? The commercial 1 and commercial 3, I mean, we've already talked that these standards are incredibly high and prohibit any sort of housing development, and that's why we're working on them right now to rewrite them. So, but you can see how far off of what the new requirements are that those districts are. All right, so aside from the minimum lot size density, there's also, this idea that we touched on of anywhere that residential uses are permitted, a municipality has to allow either 3 dwelling units, attached or detached, or if you're in a growth area or served by water and sewer, 4 dwelling units on a lot, attached or detached. So it's a little different than what LD 2003 said. Like LD 2003 in the rural areas said, you could have 2 units and an ADU, I think, but it couldn't be 3 attached units, because at the time, 3 attached units would have been multifamily in most places. But now 3 units is its own use. You've got to create this triplex use. So, even in our RR2 or RR1, if you have, 7.5 acres, you can do a triplex now.
Or if your neighbor has 2.5.
Yeah. Probably the biggest thing here to talk about is that for these triplexes and quadplexes, you cannot require, and in the rulemaking they say planning board, but for us it would be project review board, you can't require like board approval for 4 or fewer dwelling units in a single structure. So basically what they're saying is you have to use the same review process for single family, duplex, triplex, and quadplex, meaning that if someone is allowed to do a triplex or quadplex based on their density, they would just get a building permit to do it. They wouldn't have to go through site plan review or anything. Now, that does contradict a little bit because the rulemaking does say that it can't go to a planning board for approval, but it can go to like another staff board, or it doesn't preclude site plan review from being used. But as far as I know, most places don't have single family homes go through those processes. So you have another standard saying it has to go through the same process as single family home review. So I'm a little confused on that. I think we'll need more legal guidance as this goes forward. If we were going to create triplex and quadplexes as their own unique uses, would they be able to go to a staff review board if we wanted them to, or would they have to go just as a building permit and kind of by right? And then because of this, we'll have to also redefine multifamily throughout our ordinances, add these 2 new uses to basically all of our zoning districts, and decide, where exactly those would be zoned. So specific to affordable housing developments, so these were established when LD 2003 happened. It's a density bonus allowance. If you have over half the units in a multifamily project designated as affordable, you get a 2.5 times density bonus. This new legislation allows those projects to exceed municipal height restrictions by 1 story or 14 feet. I've heard some rumblings, discussion about possible legislation that would put a cap on this. So if you have a maximum building height allowance of a certain height already, that this wouldn't apply. You know, it would only apply if your maximum building height was, you know, I don't know, 30, 40 feet.
2 stories goes 3, but if you have 5, it doesn't have to go to 6.
Yeah, so the question is where, if that does happen, what is that cap put on? So we need to keep following this to see if there's any changes added and what number gets picked if it does happen.
That's a really interesting one, I think, because I would almost care less if a 50-foot building on Depot Street became a 64-foot building, or I guess it would be a 55-foot became a 69-foot.
Yeah.
Right.
I would almost be like, yeah, it's Depot Street's down, whatever. But if a building over here on this side in a single-family neighborhood became like a 50-foot building,
Right.
that would feel ridiculous to me, and probably to people who live in those neighborhoods, based on a
But there's
meeting
nothing we
that-
can do about it?
That one, I don't know.
Yeah, the only extra language it gives is that there needs to be review by, I think, the fire department or the chief based on if the fire truck can access
You're
the.
allowed to modify
We
your
just
fire
spent a
truck.
lot of money on that fire truck. I don't think we could use
I mean,
that tool.
But again, yeah, I mean, I see the kind of counterpoint here is how counterproductive is this? Is this going to have communities look at lowering
Yeah.
their existing base building heights because they're afraid of a building, an affordable housing development coming in and being, much taller?
Well,
So,
I was just going to ask you, is that going to affect the way you guys look at expanding height growth beyond Depot Street? Because we talked about doing that. And if this is going to cause you to hesitate,
so we just have, in the C1, C3, we talked about it. Right now, the building height in those districts is 35 feet. There's some allowance in a few cases to go up to 45 feet. But we had talked about, going up to 45 feet just across the board. With this, it means an affordable housing project could be
60.
5 stories instead of 4 stories. So, yeah, well, we need to have that conversation if, that's okay. Or, if people don't like the idea. But, yeah, those are things that we'll have to discuss. as we-
So, what is, and I'm going to look it up, but you might know it off the top of your head. What is the height limit in the V1, which I feel like I should know? Is
I
it
think it's
35?
probably 35.
Yeah.
I think most of our districts outside of like downtown are 35.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of the V, so
Like right downtown.
Kyle alluded to a project in the, at the top of this meeting in the information exchange that just went to the PRB. Mitch, I think you were there, and Andrew, you may have been there still at that point. A proposed subdivision here in the V1, in a neighborhood that is in a growth area, served by public water and sewer, but it's mostly, the current build-out is mostly, not all, but mostly single-family homes. And the proposal was for, I think, 12 units on a
6 duplexes.
6 duplexes on a 1.4 acre lot. And the duplexes, the proposed, we didn't have a ton of detail on the project review board didn't have a ton of detail on what the buildings were gonna look like, but the sense was like, it's a 2-story structure with a gable roof, so you think, all right, it's 30 feet tall, roughly, right? A bunch of people, like the room was full, almost, right? Or at least there were 15 people, say, from the neighborhood who came out at a conceptual meeting to say, we don't like this. we don't want this in our neighborhood. It's really different than what our build-out is now. Take that for what you will, whether you agree or disagree. I think it's interesting to see that sort of pushback already on a project of that scale.
And this is going to say there's no
Well,
stopping
and
it.
I just want to, like, even, like,
Yeah.
kind of
There wouldn't even be a hearing.
make it even further. Well, so, I don't know about that.
Yeah, more guidance
But
required to
for
determine.
one thing, the V1 right now, so was 6 duplexes, that project. The V1 allows multifamily. It allows affordable housing projects, and the building height is 35 feet. So I think there are a lot of areas in the V1 which, there is a similar sentiment. It's predominantly single family, so people feel like that's what's kind of allowed there, and that's what would go in. But multifamily is allowed. You could do an apartment building in the V1, and with the affordable housing density bonus, you get the 2.5 times the density. You could have a decent-sized apartment building on some lots in the V1. And then, so now you add on top of that, going up a story, there could be a
Yeah,
pretty
my
big
neighbor
difference
could put
between
in
a
a
current condition.
50-foot tall,
Next door neighbor.
next door neighbor, right next to my quote-unquote contributing building.
Yep.
Could be, and I realized, like, I'm sounding like a NIMBY after however many years I've been up
No,
here
we all
trying to
want more
put in,
housing, but-
like trying to change standards for more housing. But I think it's it was really interesting for me to be at that meeting and see.
Not all the neighbors were mad at it,
Part
though.
of-
Well, some stood up in favor of housing.
Yeah. No, that's true, and that's a great point. And I think that, broadly speaking, I mean, my personal opinion is that is the sort of project that would be appropriate for that neighborhood.
'Cause he could build-
But I don't live there, so who am I to say, like, how I would actually feel if it were my, this is the sort of thing that, like, I have to do soul searching on periodically, right? Like, how would I feel if this, but I think, and then I saw an article about a project in Virginia that somebody built and the county or town approved, a 30-foot tall, roughly, shed roof, kind of like multi-generational was the intent. I don't know if it was an ADU or a second unit, whatever, how it was permitted, but it was the same kind of thing where it's like, it's a neighborhood, it's not a subdivision, technically it's allowed, nobody had done it before, but these were the first people to do it and be like, oh, well, this is great, this is a cheap way to get this so that we can all live under one roof. Totally understandable and even laudable goals, I think, right, to provide housing for these are the sorts of things that we talk about wanting. The neighborhood's furious about it because now all of a sudden, instead of these little, 20-foot tall, you've got this like giant, huge house with a shed roof that kind of projects up and over the street and overshadows a lot of other houses in the neighborhood. And I think the pushback is at some level understandable when we have, so I guess it's a long way of saying, I think this adds an extra complexity potentially to discussions that we're going to have anyway as we look at, I think the design review is a great step toward simplifying some of the standards that exist in some of the walkable areas of town. But I think we may see some pushback if some of the things that are technically allowed in the design review district and in the V1 start to come, we start to see more of these projects. And I just wonder at what point do we start to scale back or like rezone or take uses out? Maybe it's like certain neighborhoods just have to get looked at differently as these rules come into effect. I don't know. I just think it's going to be
Yeah,
interesting. It's basically my
there's a
comment.
stark difference downtown between, your residential areas, up behind Beans or wherever, and your downtown area. And to treat them the same from a zoning perspective, may not be the right thing, I agree.
Yeah, and it's now, we no longer have like visual compatibility. So which is, I think is good. I'm in favor of that. But now there's no way to say like, well, hey, my house has been here for 100 years and it's 15 feet tall So you can't put in a 50-foot tall, it's not visually compatible with any of the other houses. So that's, that protection, or if you want to call it protection, restriction, whatever, has been removed. I just think that there is the potential for, start popping the popcorn now on some of this stuff, because it may get interesting. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm interested to see if there's any proposed changes to it, any new legislation. I mean, with all of this,
Any of the
but
communities
specifically.
throughout the state object? Did any council object?
I mean, as far as I know, this wasn't nearly as,
Well, public.
outreached as, I mean, I know I heard about it much later than I heard about LD 2003 being developed. And when LD 2003 was being worked
Most of what
at.
they're after, we are also after. So it's not the
That's the-
intent
yeah.
of what they're after but it is, but it should be locally controlled. Where, what?
I think they've received a decent amount of feedback from communities after the fact, but, I don't know if that'll lead to any proposed changes or if it'll just stay the way it is.
Now, is this state-driven, or is this some of this coming down from the feds?
State.
This is all state-driven?
Yep.
I mean, I understand all the concerns that were raised, but I would be disappointed if we were going to slow walk the progress we've been talking about making because of the fear of the state law.
But I think and so I don't disagree on wanting to make progress, wanting to follow through with our zoning goals. I think what concerns me is rooms full of angry people, not because rooms full of angry people are always right about everything, because there's a representation issue in a room full of angry people. We talked about that, right? Whose voices are being heard. But I also think that there's a risk in proceeding, having these standards sort of piggyback on the progress, and then getting a backlash that pulls everything back. So I see that risk too, and I think that's part of the challenge, is navigating that line of how are we responsive to individual community or neighborhood, really, I should say. I mean, if we're all part of the Freeport community, how do we, because I think it's totally reasonable for Mitch to say hey, I live in basically a rural neighborhood. I don't want my neighbor to be able to build a bunch of, because you want to be able to plan your life, right? You buy a house because that's where you want to live, and you want a certain character of the neighborhood. It's reasonable, I think it's reasonable for me to feel too, I live in a walkable area. It might not be reasonable for me to say, I don't want 4 units next to me, because I think it is reasonable for me to say, I don't want a 50-foot
50-foot
apartment building next to me, right?
The people we never hear from are the people who can't afford to live anywhere around here, And we have to be concerned about that too.
No, totally, yeah, and that's, that's something that I think we've made a lot of progress on over the last few years, and we've talked a lot about, and making sure those voices are represented. I just think that there's we're gonna have to find a middle ground, and I keep coming back to what we talked a lot about as part of the comp plan process, right? There's Depot Street, downtown areas where we have the infrastructure and we have the built environment that supports bigger buildings already. That's where the energy should be focused. And I think we are going to have to work to protect some of these neighborhoods that are in the middle. I think where people live, it's not that we shouldn't be streamlining permitting as we're doing with the design review. It's not that we shouldn't be allowing a higher density, but I do think that thinking about the scale of the buildings, I mean, it's a building height and mass, and the way that 6 duplexes, if people were fired up about 6 duplexes, imagine if it had been a 3-story, 12-unit block instead of 6 duplexes. I feel like that would be more. So I think there's a lot of, as with anything, there's a lot of gray area. And so I think finding the right path
I don't think we need to get too upset about it yet.
I think if we don't think about it as we're.
Well, there's nothing wrong with thinking about it, but just because, one little lot's been, proposed to have some buildings on it, doesn't mean we gotta, turn the world upside down, because,
But everyone's gonna do it.
yeah, I mean,
I think it levels the kind of, it balances a lot of the zoning districts out to be more similar, whereas, we might have had standards that made districts more unique before, it's going to make a lot of them feel more similar
Which is
than they
what
are now.
we said we didn't want as part of our comp plan. I think that's what's concerning to me. And also, and I mean, not gonna lie, the 50-foot apartment building that is at least theoretically possible next to my house is also concerning to me. And I know that, again, I know it makes me sound like a NIMBY, but like, at least they're on the north side.
Are you done with your presentation? I'm not trying to rush you too much.
No. There's a couple more things. So we're moving outside of the housing stuff now. So these last couple of things are the additional legislative updates that were also in here. So one of them relates to minimum parking requirements. Still residential, but parking related to residential. So the state law says that a municipality may not require more than one off-street parking space per dwelling unit. Outside of growth areas, you can require more, but this is inside of growth areas.
Oh, this is in growth
Yeah,
areas.
specifically in growth areas. Now, we have a minimum parking requirement of one or less for some of our multifamily uses, specifically in the VC1 right downtown. So those already comply with this. But basically everywhere else in our growth areas, we're going to have to lower our minimum parking requirement down to one. So when you're talking about single-family duplexes anywhere, multifamily outside of VC1,
So on Elm Street, when somebody puts in these 6 units, they only have 6 parking spaces and all the other cars are street parking.
That was one of the.
What if the
concerns.
street parking, what if there isn't street parking? I mean, where do the cars go?
well, it's saying that, you can only require one per unit. So if it was, 6 duplexes would have to have 12 spaces. But,
Oh, yeah, 12, okay,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
whatever.
yeah, whatever the
But the
project
point is,
is.
there's gonna be 1.5 times that many cars, or at least, and so that's cars that are street parking.
If the developer chooses to
Just do
just do the minimum.
You can do the minimum.
Which is fairly likely, I guess, in some cases.
Oh, right, because.
Yeah, a developer can always choose to do more,
That's right.
but we can't, we or
Insist.
any other municipality couldn't require them to do more.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, there's a car, or there's a lot of, building on my, morning drive to drop the kids off at school that there's almost always a very large truck parked like halfway into the street. And often I have to wait to get around, and it's like, I don't really care that much. I realize I'm sounding more and more like a curmudgeon, but like, if you have that sort of thing start to crop
Okay.
up in more places, I could see it, at a certain point, it's like one car on the street, it's fine, whatever. But if it starts to be every other house, and all of a sudden you can't get through the street, and then you have to widen the street, like, these are the sorts of things that could theoretically start to be frustrating.
So the other piece here is that municipalities must allow a developer to satisfy their parking requirement through off-site agreements with existing parking facilities within a quarter mile. So we have a provision in our off-street parking section in zoning somewhat similar to this, but not quite as substantial. So we have a provision that allows off-street parking, or off-site parking, sorry, to meet the parking requirement, but only if it's 300 feet from the entrance to a site and the two properties have to be in the same ownership. So what the state is saying is, you're bumping up that 300 to a quarter mile and the properties don't have to be in the same ownership, which I think it's fine. It's a thing that a lot of places do. Imagine if there's a housing development in the C1 and there's a commercial use a couple lots away or a lot away, and they propose a sidewalk to connect the two lots, and the lot next door is a commercial development, so people are in office, so people are primarily there during the day, and you can share the parking, and the residential uses are primarily parked overnight. But it is a change from what we have now. And then I think
Sorry, does the state have any, like, what is the structure of satisfying a parking requirement? Like, does it have to be a lease agreement in place? Does it have to be is there some performance guarantee, or do you just be like, oh, yeah, there's a lot over there, it's fine?
I don't think they give any model
It says you have to have an agreement,
something, yeah, there might be more specifics in the actual
so they want some kind of
language.
contract to
Yeah.
say you've provided them.
And then finally is residential units in commercial zones. This is probably the least impactful one. Basically, it says that municipality has to allow residential units in commercial zones. But for the most part, we already meet this. All of our commercial zones are C1, C3, village commercial. Those are already mixed-use districts. We already allow residential. The only places we don't allow residential are really in like our industrial districts, which I don't think this applies to. And so the only commercial district that we have would be the local business district, which is a pretty small area in town.
This is by far the least
Yeah.
concerning to me. This
So, yeah, this one's pretty minimal change. That's it really for the scope of changes. So, I mean, what we're going to do, staff,
We have to comply by July 1st, but they haven't done the rulemaking yet?
rulemaking, I think, is supposed to be formally adopted, finished in January. So, yeah, it's a pretty tight timeline.
Good thing you have nothing else going on, right?
Yeah, we don't have any other projects that we're working on for sure. So first, we need to see if anything new comes out that would change any of this. Are they going to push the implementation deadline back further? Are they going to update things like that building height requirement? We'll keep an eye out on that. But yeah, as of now, compliance deadline of July 1st. We're doing the C1 and C3 changes already as part of the comp plan recommendations. So we'll do our best to comply with these changes, at least in those two districts, while we're already in there. And then once we were done that, later in the spring, we could potentially come back and start making the rest of the compliance changes to the village districts and our other zones.
So if we don't want to fight with the height rule, after this guy gets through and the new height rule comes in, we can just drop it back again and figure it the 14 feet there, right?
We could.
Yeah, because we talked about that when we did it.
I think the problem with that approach is the height restriction is specifically tied to the affordability
Right.
piece. And so like, we don't really want to require all buildings to meet a lower height restriction. I don't like it.
Yeah, not every project is going to be able to go 14 feet,
I
right?
see, I
Yeah,
see.
it's only the
and it's like-
affordable housing
Then all of a
development.
sudden, you'd be saying that a market rate
Yeah, it has
building
to be.
can't be
Yep, that's right.
4 stories.
Which just pushes everything to the top of the market, because then if you're gonna build it and it can only be 3 stories, then it's gotta be luxury, because that's where the
Yeah.
margin is.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, it's not great. I don't like it.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
So this is mostly just, informational at this
We've been
point.
years and years and years, and we're only getting one building started.
That's true.
So, let's put it in perspective.
No, I know. I think we've made a lot of progress. I think that's part of my point. It's like, we've made a lot of progress. Like, why are we, doing the wrong, or forcing the wrong thing here? So, it's okay. In the grand scheme of things, it'll be fine. We have a good comp plan, we have a good couple boards, strong community. I'm not worried in the, cosmic sense of it. I just, yeah. Yeah, please. I'm very impressed that you're still here.
Kyle invited me. We haven't met yet, but you invited me here. Thank
Okay.
you. My question is,
Could you identify yourself?
Jonathan Nichols, resident of Freeport. My question is, properties that fall within the growth zone, but they're in a zone that extends well beyond the growth zone, and what's going to happen with those? For example, I live on I have the furthest north property in the growth zone, but it's also the most southerly property of MBD zone, which goes almost to Brunswick. So how are those going to be addressed with these new laws, where they fall in the growth zone, but they're in a zone that extends way beyond it? I think there's a couple other zones that do that too.
So I can't remember, John, do you have public water, sewer, or no?
I do not.
Right, so you'd be in this tier here. So in growth area, without public water and without public sewer, the minimum lot size requirement won't be able to be more than 20,000 square feet.
Okay,
That would only apply to the portion of your property that's in the growth area. If you're saying your property, part of it is in the growth area and part
no,
of it is not?
the whole property's in the growth area.
Oh,
But MDB zone, the minimum lot size is 40,000 square feet.
Yep.
And so you're not going to change the MDB zone all the way to Brunswick to be now 20,000 square feet.
It's something the board will have to
If it's in
talk
the growth
about.
zone,
we could, but not required.
Yeah.
This,
We could either, there's a few ways to deal with it. The MDB zone, you could just change it to 20,000 square foot minimum lot size, whether it's in the growth area or not. You could say for the portion of the MDB in the growth area, the minimum lot size is now 20,000, and outside of the growth area, it's whatever it is now, 40,000. Or, the biggest change, you could rezone the whole area into a different zone and leave the MDB as the part out of the growth area with its own existing standards, and then for the portion in the growth area, create a different zone or something like that. So there'd be a few different options, but they would all essentially equate to the same thing, which is meeting that 20,000, at least meeting that 20,000 square foot standard.
Okay. Great, thank you.
so there are opportunities for you to weigh in as this progresses, I guess.
Yes, what do you think we should do?
That's the takeaway, yeah. I mean, it's interesting, like, if you had,
I would say in those areas that you would need at least 20,000 square feet, because without public sewer, you have to meet the state requirements for 20,000 square feet for septic and all that. So the board, I don't think, would be able to lower the minimum lot size below 20,000 there.
yeah, I mean, it makes me think maybe some rezoning, redrawing the boundary lines to align with growth areas and.
Well, the same thing, if there's less difference between all the zones, maybe we don't need so many.
Just one.
Just one zone.
Yeah,
or
zone
maybe- or-
consolidation is something, right, that I think I'd already kind of thought about a little bit with some of our village districts, because a lot of them do overlap in a lot of ways, but yeah, this could.
But it's, it's interesting too that and I know everybody wants to know that, but I also am sort of sensitive to like the characters of individual neighborhoods too. And as much as we've tried to move away from overlays and stuff, it's like, do you have this like, oh, this is the, whatever lane neighborhood, and it has a certain overlay that does certain things. I don't know. There's going to be a lot of discussion, as always.
Could I ask just one more question on this?
Yep.
If we did have, does that design ordinance that we have, or anything like that, get superseded by this? Does that mean the design ordinance couldn't have anything in it that superseded this? For instance, if we kept the compatibility language, would that be a violation of the state law?
I don't think so. I don't remember reading anything in there about, design standards, like not being able to have design standards, but, yeah. I mean, right now, there are no space and bulk standards in our design ordinance, so it's not like we'd have to worry about changing anything in there to comply with all of our space and bulk standards are in zoning, so, but, yeah, I mean, something the board can look at.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a interesting sort of end run to just say in the design review district, that building height maximum is 50 feet, no matter what, because it's incompatible with our design standards if it's taller than that, affordable housing.
Yeah, I don't know. So like that, I don't think you could do, like calling out a specific number. I don't know.
You could.
It would certainly be a legal
You
question.
could call out a specific building that exists in town and is a specific height. I mean, there's always ways around it, but anyway. Yeah, I don't want to make it seem like I'm supportive of all these end runs. What I'm supportive of is, finding ways to meet the needs of the community in a way that
Which
supports
is
our
to
cause.
protect-
Yeah, I mean,
So I think a lot of the goals of this are good. It's just that I feel like we were doing some of this on our own. And
I'm
I don't
sensitive to what Wayne was saying too. I don't want to undo the direction, but I think we should know the legal there, Kyle, because I think we are going to be faced with the task of trying to protect certain neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I think there's like, I see it all in sort of like a step up or a step down, and people do, there are individual property rights, and there are, just like we were not doing enough to support housing in this district, and we were not doing enough to streamline, and I think we've made a lot of progress. I think we also have a duty to support people's right to live in a place that they feel good about and not have it change too much, too fast, so that they feel like they're getting a deal they didn't sign up for, so it's a balance. All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, well, I'll give one of you the second. All in favor? Great.
Thanks, everyone.